Hi, everybody. It's Allison, and I'm reconnecting with Lynn after a little bit. And
Hi, everyone.
we did, gosh, it's been a while, Lynn, since we actually recorded on open education resources. But I had posted a video that I think I had sat on for almost a year because my life had gotten so crazy, and I finally got around to it, but it had to do with Evan Baer of Learn Capital and his visit to the Vatican. And so we had recorded it, I think, a year ago, March, and then I only got around to putting it out a few months ago once I got back into Arkansas, and it's even more relevant. It seems even more relevant. And so in the meantime, in the last few months, you and a number of other colleagues have been sort of pushing back on this open education resource legislation front, both at the state level and also within the Republican Party of Texas, to be like, hey guys, there's more to the story, but wait, there's more. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and how this intersects with a recent clip that Bobby had put out about how blockchain is the future. But maybe you could just give us a little update from your vantage point in the Dallas Metroplex.
Yeah, well, so we've been, for the most part, standing up against open education resources and this massive Amplify vendor bill, which was backed by Learn Capital, so in Evan Baer in Austin. And so we've also been pushing back against government-regulated school choice and then charter schools. So those are kind of the three things that we see as a lot of the same people are backing those three things and the candidates who support those. And
could you say a little bit about the government regulated part of the school choice? Because isn't that the interesting wrinkle in the school choice narratives, right? About strings attached or no strings attached.
Exactly. And so the point being, why would you flee the public schools and the government regulated schools only to accept the government regulated school choice? So we were trying to help people to understand that if you take the money and let it follow the child, so do those same things that the public schools have to jump through the hoops. And so people in the Republican Party have been frustrated and calling us Democrats because I went to the Republican convention to speak out against these strings and the agenda behind vouchers and telling them, look, you think you're supporting freedom and choice and liberty and all that when you're just accepting the same things that we're trying to fix in the public schools.
Actually, you're expanding it, right? Because it's going into everybody's
government.
Yeah.
Right, because it runs through the comptroller. It expands the Texas Education Agency. And so it's not a solution. So we're trying to help them understand, no, that doesn't fix the problem. And all children will be enveloped and engulfed in this because it's public-private charter and no one can escape once the dollars follow the child. But more importantly, so our governor, Greg Abbott, he was given $6 million from Jeff Yass in Philly, from your old stomping ground. And there's this big hit piece, kind of a website created against me. It's the truth about Lynn. And it talks a lot about school choice and how
but if they just had your blockchain twin, they could verify all of this information, which
my digital twin is out there now. So they're attacking me and my counterpart, Mary Lowe, who started this group called Families Engaged. And so they're trying to paint, the partisanship mess is in there because it's trying to paint, it increases the polarization, left-right paradigm, which I operate mostly in the right space because that is the party in control. And so
and I was on the opposite for many years in Philadelphia, right? But we knew the problem was the same problem.
Right. And so my point in bringing that up is that because we're standing in the way of something, either it's a government contract, it has something to do with open education resources and the technology that we're sounding the alarms on, or it's charter schools, or it's vouchers, or it's all the above, because as we're about to talk about, all of this intersects with Texas trying to become a leader in blockchain and digital wallets, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, competency-based education. Everything you do will be on this ledger, and this, the values. We even have a chaplain bill where, talking about values, they're trying to impose a certain type of values on children. Well, if I come from the Christian values and following Christ, that is what they're saying this chaplain bill will do, is bring in the Christian values in the school, but they don't realize that opens it up for all faiths.
Right.
And as you and I know,
and I've often said, I think they want a blockchain religion.
And I believe you're right. And so they'll do it. So people think that, oh no, we're going to bring in these, fruits of the spirit or something, and teach children good Christian values. What they don't understand is they're opening it up to all faiths, but that's not really what I believe is what you just said is exactly what I think is happening. So all faiths will be folded into this system, and it doesn't matter, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever, every single faith under the sun, every theocracy, every denomination, every cult, all will participate. And
I hadn't really thought about that. Who sponsored the chaplain bill? Do you know off the top of your head?
A guy who was my brother's fraternity brother.
Okay.
Mays Middleton. Yeah. Mays Middleton, a UT grad, and now he's a legislator. And he's like, we need to, give these instead. Well, okay. The reason is because instead of social emotional learning, which I've been opposed to in the schools,
right?
I didn't send my kids there to learn all these things that I'm to teach them, and I'm fine with, if there's behavior problems and issues, of course, if a child needs additional, continuum of care or supports, absolutely give them referrals for that. But don't just blanket SEL for 30 minutes a day on my child, teaching them values that don't align with mine. So I wanted them to learn reading, writing, math, the basics, right. And they weren't doing that in my district. Right. So the idea is that, okay, well, now they're bringing all of this SEL, social emotional learning, values, attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, and all that that goes up against someone's faith. And so they're saying, well, now, okay, let's replace those things with these chaplains. And so school district
problem, reaction, solution.
Right, exactly. And so I'm saying, hold up, no, I don't want any chaplains in the school. I don't want the SEL in the schools. And I definitely don't want the chaplains. I mean, we already have, I'll stay on task, but that's that is the kind of the polarization. So if you're against this, you must be a Democrat or an atheist, or it's that false dilemma fallacy. And so right. Mary and I are getting targeted for opposing those who would, we might align on maybe 80% of the things politically, but these are major hot button issues right now.
Right. Well, there's a lot of money, and there's a whole future paradigm of what the future of education is writing on this, and it's all has right. to do with Web3.
We're standing in the middle, and we're throwing.
You're complicating the story. They have two stories, depending on which side. The other side is the bad guy, right. And neither of the stories they're telling are complete. I mean, really, no. There's a much larger structure that we should all, no matter where you are on the political, ideological, value-based continuum, should have ethical questions about, like, handing over our children and the natural world to automated smart contracts.
Yeah, and what I found is anytime you stand in the gap of what people are doing to access the children, the bullets and the darts fly. And so they'll try and attack you. And so, when I did it back in the school board run that I had in 2017, it was the left coming after me. And now it's the right coming after me. So, which am I?
Right. Well, and the sad thing is, because you were
Democrat or Republican.
Well, you were trying to explain to some of the teachers what was happening, right? So that's how they're putting a certain label, like, oh, now you're aligned with this group, right? So you must be bad because we don't like that group. But
Yeah, and you know, I spoke at an AFT rally, which is the American Federation of Teachers. They asked me to come and talk about data mining, data harvesting, how they're trying to replace the teachers with devices, and they introduced me as a conservative. So it's like so am I supposed to say no to that? I was also invited to a rally for the GOP. So I go where there's a megaphone
audience.
and a microphone. Yeah, and an audience who I believe can hear. And so, you know,
But ultimately, the teachers still don't understand Web3.
no,
Like,
they
so
don't
if
understand
their frame continues to be around data mining and privacy, which again, we were both like in an online, you know, email group with Lainey Hameson, and that was like the Diane Ravitch Lainey Hameson thing was all about the privacy, small class size and privacy. Well, great, you're going to have your small class size with your AI robot at your kitchen table, and your privacy is going to be ensured by blockchain. But they could never get to the point because guess what? Diane's son, Joe Ravitch, is working with Rain Group and Jeff Stein and SoftBank. So, you know, and Ari Emanuel and alternate reality and, you know, Parchment, digital credentials. So it's hard, like for me as someone who more typically would have aligned with a progressive lens, to realize, you know, that was my first inclination, that they take people and put them up front to be these leaders of movements so that they can keep them moving and keep the conversation narrow and focused, whether or not, I mean, at this point, I think Diane Ravitch doesn't like have it that much together anymore, but like to really keep it so that you don't talk about the other stuff. In all of the groups, no matter whether you're progressive or conservative, I think they've got people out front that manage the float, so to speak. And if you, and clearly you and Mary and you know, the folks who were saying, wait, we need to have a different conversation. Right. But,
Yeah,
you know, if we are
group.
actually following our values, we need to have we need to spend enough time to be informed enough to have that conversation. Slow it all down.
This is the same group that you featured when we went to the Capitol 2 years ago to storm the blockchain council meeting and tell them, hey, hold up. You think you're here to study blockchain, but really we've already got it. And they're doing it on the children. They're blockchaining and putting children on blockchain with their mental health, their academic records, and their health records, all on these blockchain wallets done through the Texas Education Agency, Dallas ISD, Dallas College. So it is absolutely here, and then to pretend that we're going to study this and not address the education piece of it.
But in those hearings, that most of the people were not willing to acknowledge the role in education or healthcare records. They just wanted to talk about it like it was crypto.
No, and they do what, you know, we call mansplaining, where they're like, I don't think you understand what you're talking about, or you don't really know.
Little lady.
Little lady, I think you, and so they, you know, the condescension that comes from there. But I know enough as someone who I had to understand, I was a recruiter and I had to understand who I was hiring, what their background was, hardware, software, operating system. So yes, I only understand it from a superficial. It's not, you know, I'm not the one programming and doing the work, but I do understand enough to understand what this is and why we don't want it.
Right.
And if they question me for questioning that, so be it. But we've got enough parents who are saying, no, I don't want this. And if our governor says he signs 2 blockchain bills saying that Texas seeks to be the leader in blockchain, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin, I believe him. And I believe that we will be, and we are a leader. And that's why RFK does his campaign announcement and, you know, the big reveal at, you know, in Texas. And Texas is a huge target. We educate 1/10 of America's kids. Texas has the money. Texas has the water. Texas has the resources.
The supercomputers.
The supercomputers. Austin is like little Silicon Valley. We are a major driver in education technology. We're also a major driver in education bills at the federal and state level. What happens here, much of what's piloted here tends to go, you know, we have George Bush and No Child Left Behind. So it's significant. And they know that. And we also were a driver in the textbook adoption. So if you wanted textbooks to be adopted, you go to Texas, and then everyone follows what we do. And so we've got the book battle.
Right.
You have JFK shot right there at the Texas Book Depository in Dallas. I think it's all significant, symbolic, and it's, I would go.
Well, and the space, I would say, the more that I've been working, looking into this idea of remote viewing, astral projection, like disembodied, using technology to get out into other information spaces. Like, I'm convinced that a lot of the NASA work, like in Houston, is actually about inner space. And so this is going to start to dovetail with the mental health and the biofeedback and, wearables for neurodiverse students and all the stuff that Learn Capital is pushing. And it's going to dovetail with space medicine, again, whatever we understand space as. And I'm not, don't call me a flat earther, but there's some more stuff going on. And when you look at Edgar Mitchell and the Institute for Noetic Science and the role they're playing now with Emerald Gate, and you can see the Walton family, all the Walton foundations are so deeply involved in the ed reform agenda. And, back when we were just starting out, Lynn, in like 2015, 2016, like we knew enough to know this was a problem, this was a red flag, but our view, we didn't have any idea how much we didn't know.
Yeah.
Like it was an education to get there. And I still have people today who want to follow along, but they're like, it's a lot of work. And I'm like, yeah, it's really been our full-time job for the past decade. And we didn't know, like it was our unpaid full-time job. And
if we don't use the actual terms, if we don't understand it to that degree, and we don't explain it in the way that we explain it, then we would be considered novices, and we would have this pedestrian view of things. We're not smart enough to use the big terms. We're not, we can't win. So it's like if we explain the full scale, the full spectrum of this,
right.
If we use all of the complicated terms, definitions, and show everything, then yes, that it is complicated. We're not saying that you have to understand all of it. I don't understand all of it. I've always said that I'm way behind in what you understand, but I think we can't win if we keep it to simple. People want a one pager on this. Well, it's not possible.
Give me a soundbite. Can you make a TikTok video? Like, no.
Yes. Well, speaking of
maybe
TikTok,
somebody else could make. Exactly. Yes. We need to go back. We need
TikTok.
to go. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm not saying that yes, as people did that piece, but it's somebody of that
school
caliber.
Choice is the hot plate issue right now.
He gave our governor $6 million. He has a tech company. He's invested in TikTok. So it's somebody who has that level of access and understanding of technology and government contracts, access to government documents, those kinds of things. So it's not just a little guy with the young conservatives that did the piece.
Yeah.
But and in school choice.
So do they say specifically, or is it just a personality thing? Do they say what they're endorsing? Like we're endorsing school choice, or is it really just a smear?
They make it about the unions and school choice, but it came after we've really put a wrench in the open education resources, which is the same people. So I don't know. I mean, it's just to discredit us, to shut us up, so that we quit showing up to these things to be that wrench in the gears.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
well, and the OER overlaps with blockchain. I mean, your digital education record is going to be a permanent ledger of the way in which you engage in digital media in extended reality, which is really what's being built out in Texas, I mean, in large extent. And so that mixed reality, your skills badges and all of that, it will be how did you interact with this piece of information, digital information, right? And did you accomplish your task? And this goes back to the Stimuli School. Can you speak a little briefly about what Stimuli is and how it connects to Commit?
Yeah, and okay, so Stimuli, STEMI, this capital, then ULI, Stemuli. And that is a nod to the movement to bring in science, technology, engineering, and math. Well, no one's against, math and kids learning science, but STEM is something that our friend Lynn Taylor's talked a lot about, and how they brought that into the schools as kind of a Trojan horse for other things. But so Taylor Shedd is the CEO of Stemuli, and you and I have done a couple of videos on her, and she worked at the Apple store. She went to private school in North Dallas, a Black female who supposedly started this business to bring in, it's like workforce aligned learning in the metaverse. And so they have a metaverse campus. That means the kids go to school in the metaverse 3 days a week, and then they're in a physical campus in Dallas ISD 2 days a week. They have an avatar that they're assigned, an eyeball follows them throughout
floating
this
eyeball, like a satellite kind of floating.
Yeah, like an eyeball on the screen. And so it follows them, and you'll see along the halls of this virtual learning is IBM and all these corporations. So parents thinking that their children are going to have these great jobs lined up after they move through this metaverse campus. They're going to have these 21st century skills and global skills to be able to get gainful employment and all. So Taylor Shedd, she was chosen, and she's tied in with the Commit Partnership, and the Commit Partnership has been they're heavily funded by the Gates Foundation and Steve Ballmer and Blue Meridian, and they are a nonprofit in Dallas. The Commit Partnership tends to write most of the bills that come in through Texas legislation to push the technology, the STAR testing, that's our accountability system, pre-K enrollment, and they also chose the Greenlight Credentials blockchain wallets for kids in Dallas to be
like your learning locker,
lifelong locker. So in the Commit Partnership, they just have like the governor, and they call me a Democrat, but it's funny, our Republican governor appointed this Todd Williams, the founder of Commit, who's an avowed Democrat, donates to Democrats and so the Abbott appoints him to 4 boards and commissions to steer funding and these initiatives in Texas that will be scaled nationwide. And so that's why I say Texas is a target.
I mean, and Todd came out of Goldman Sachs, right?
Yeah, Todd was a Goldman Sachs guy, and it's essentially, he's done these social impact bonds. That was the initial goal, but then he figured out how to get it funded through the legislature. So it's a little bit different than your typical social impact bond where you set up a mechanism to capitalize on outcomes, and you take a social
But the thing is, you could, with a blockchain, you could create a smart contract. Like you could structure an outcomes-based contract with a cohort of students in a metaverse school, and it would all be anonymous. So like the privacy people would be fine, right? As long as the data were anonymized. You've got a cohort of 1,000 kids across several schools, and they're in the metaverse. And the smart contract data is like once they've leveled up to a certain number of badges, the payout happens, right? And it's all anonymous, and they're all improving their human capital by playing in the metaverse with their satellite tracker. And you would check the boxes for the things that we're allowed to talk about and be concerned about. But we're not actually allowed to say, is sending kids into digital surveillance in a hybrid environment and then having international, multinational corporations betting on their outcomes, whether or not they level up to their, prescribed key performance indicators, is an ethical way to run public education. Like, that's the conversation you're not allowed to have. You can talk about AI taking over the world. You can talk about privacy. You can talk about, all these other things that are allowable, but the other conversations we'd like to have are not.
No. And so they want to keep it to simple things like, oh, you're just part of those unions wanting to radicalize and indoctrinate children. Well, what they've done a really good job of with libs of TikTok and this entrainment, as you say, in the ways that the digital like the videos and the steering. It's basically steering us and drawing us like moths to a flame. So you're presented with this information, and if they, depending on your leanings, and so we're all kind of.
And you've got a digital twin, so they know how to push your buttons, right?
They know what to push, how to push your buttons and to put things in front of you that will
trigger,
elicit a response and trigger you. Mm-hmm. But it's not to say that those aren't real people doing really weird things that they're using, but those people are also being entrained. And so what it does is it shows that a teacher is bad and more dangerous than a digital device. And the perception is that the digital device and the education technology, that would be unbiased, and that your child would be better off in front of an unbiased digital device than this evil woke teacher that's going to indoctrinate them and over-sexualize them or groom them. Yeah. And so it's working. And so now you have all these, and I'm not saying, I mean, look, Mary and I, we spend a lot of time also we file grievances in these local school districts because there are districts that are abusing children. There are people that are abusing children. We should not, we're not okay with that. Right. So, but to think that they can't be, trafficked, indoctrinated, all the things on a device is fantasy land, and that won't have inappropriate and stuff that's not age appropriate in there just because it's a digital device is silly. Well, I think it's do you mind just on the Yas thing? Because TikTok is like, wasn't Texas involved at some point in like pushing back against TikTok in China? Like there was that whole that was a huge distraction with China and TikTok, and as you've helped me understand, China is not the thing. And so, but the thing is, Yas's company, Susquehanna International Group, is the main shareholder in TikTok. Exactly. Right. So like it kind of bends your mind when you're like, oh, Texas like keeping those Chinese out with their apps and our stuff. And like, meanwhile, your governor is taking major cash from the guy whose company owns a majority share in TikTok that has an education division. I mean, he's a libertarian, and libertarians are big time supporters of blockchain because that's going to cut out the middleman, and then we'll have all of this just freedom, like don't automated government. Right. And again, it's like, okay, I understand why people don't want to be left or right, and then they say, okay, libertarian is my best option, but I don't think they understand it's not an escape from the system. It's just a new system. And that's what we say about the school choice. It's like you're escaping, like Corey DeAngelis, who, he's like Betsy DeVos's puppet in the face. He's like the poster child of school choice in Texas, and all the legislators just have this man crush on him. It's a really strange thing. And when the hit piece came out from Mary and me, of course, Corey's retweeting it. I'm like, oh, we have arrived now. Corey. But Corey, it's funny because he's listed on the UNESCO website, and we've been talking a lot about, when you and I talked about open education resources, this technology, that OER was defined by UNESCO in 2002. And you got great charts on that and from our video. But Corey DeAngelis, the reason I brought him up was because he says, let's fund students, not systems. But literally, he's funding the new system. It's a whole new system run through the comptroller. Like, it's a government system. It's just, they think it's decentralized, but it actually, it puts enormous centralized power at the TA. And so I keep saying, let's go after the mothership of these massive state agencies. I'm like, if we're supposed to be limited government and for less government, why would we then expand it over here? I say, well, we don't even need this Texas Education Agency. Right. Instead, they go after 1,200 districts and the teachers. Like, let's demonize the teachers in these districts. No, let's go after the mothership of the agency. But people, they don't listen to me, or maybe they do. I don't know. So I just want to take a little bit of time. This is a video clip that was on the RFK Jr
campaign website that someone passed along to me. And it's just about 2 minutes. But again, I've talked before about sort of the Bobby Nicole framing of like her being the, pioneer in AI law, right? And the smart contract person and the person who wants to do AI wellness. And, and I do think that this AI wellness is going to meld with some sort of spiritualism that will start to interface with the San Patrignano treatment, mental health and addiction treatment programs that Bobby wants to put in place. And I didn't watch the debates, but I've heard a number of people just say that they were a mess, like they were a spectacular shocker. So I don't think that Bobby is going to be put in a position to like get the big prize, but I do think that he is being used to imprint a lot of ideas like on everyone's consciousness. So the thumbnail for this actually is like blockchain is the future. And it's on his campaign website. So you assume that it's being endorsed. And it says Forbes breaking news. Independent presidential candidate RFK Jr. speaks to Forbes newsroom. Okay, so this is, a serious-ish, as serious as journalism can be these days, conversation. And it's been clipped out of it because it's got like a sound thing underneath. But I want to talk about, well, first, I know it's a little blurry, but like your impressions of the backdrop. Which is I'm assuming you got to choose since it says Kennedy.
Is it like a barn?
It's like a barn with a flag in it.
Yes, flag.
And like big
it's
mountains.
Kind of like, okay. And then you got these beautiful mountains. Like, is that some sort of, this is just
like a meadow. It's like, the core of America, right? Like, I guess maybe there's parts of California that look like that. I don't think it's coastal California where he lives. So he's embodying like the sturdiness of the American, psyche, with the mountains and the productive farmland and the red, white, and blue. And I think this is really important because, for most of his career, RFK Jr. was working at Natural Resources Defense Council, which was taking again, tons of money from left-leaning, environmental organizations. Meanwhile, he's still pushing for decentralized energy, and he was doing that in different places in Texas in, 10 or 15 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. So he's, they're all about the alternative energy stuff. And I feel like he wants to frame things as patriotism. And he also wants to talk about AI and blockchain without actually acknowledging that those technologies are global structures.
Those technologies are also under fire right now because of the massive amount of energy that it requires to mine Bitcoin. And so that's a huge debate going on with Senator Ted Cruz and the blockchain industry, as well as fighting with the conservationists and the green energy people and the just those who are fighting global warming and such. So I think all of this is symbolic for the mountains and the green. All of that is more environmental.
If they just had a river running through it somewhere, then that would be all of it. I don't see a river in there.
Right, that might be water right there. But then the barn. So the Trumpers, if you drive through Texas, you see this symbol everywhere: a red barn and the American flag.
Okay.
Just along the highways of Texas. So I think that is this is just symbolic to appeal to all sides, and this is your option in the middle. But it's a contradiction to be pro blockchain, pro environment, because the two.
Well, and I would say pro nationalist, like pro patriot. Because this clip, he keeps talking about keeping blockchain here in the United States for our economic benefit, which is essentially undermines the idea that it's peer-to-peer decentralized system. It's
Well,
not a
and that's what the
nationalized
legislature
system.
wanted.
It's extra national. It's outside of any sort of national border. It's borderless. That's the whole point. Is this is borderless. So
It is borderless, but that was one of the legislators. The Republican is actually the Attorney General Ken Paxton's wife, Angela Paxton, was one of the two bills that the governor signed for blockchain, and she told me, "Well, we want if I mean it's coming anyway. We don't want it to be China to do it, so we want it to be Texas's version of blockchain." So there's also that. Like we want to be first because they're going to do it anyway. You want to be.
But I would just say they don't understand blockchain because it's not one or the other. It's all the same. I mean, it's all a peer-to-peer. Like that's the whole point. So here, well, listen to it a little bit. Let me just start. Yeah. So independent. He's independent. Right.
I don't have any confidence. I don't think most Americans do, that President Trump or President Biden can deal with these new issues, the emerging issues like blockchain.
So I think it's interesting that he's calling it a new issue. So on the one hand, he tries to sort of say like it's new to him, right? Oh, I didn't know anything about this, only except for my daughter was dating, the guy who was one of the highest crypto holders in the world before he, dropped off in ayahuasca in Mexico or whatever, and lost his keys. So maybe to him it's new, but for us, we know, Nicole, he has Nicole as his sidekick. She's been in on the ground floor at least since the public rollout with Ethereum in like 2015. So it's, it new being relatively speaking. It's like in blockchain years, 2015 is like old, right? So it's not actually, maybe it's new to him, but he thinks it's new. It's not new. It's been building. And I can say that my focus has been, as soon as I started looking into ed tech, and I will say it's interesting because the executive order to set up the XAPI, which is connected to advanced distributed learning. This was the distance learning for the National Guard and then the Defense Department and then federal employees and then everyone. And that's the base, that is the core piece of all the educational technology system is XAP. Well, it was SCORM at the time, Shareable Content Object Reference Module. And they would say, oh, well, we need it because the guys in the submarines, when they get an update to the software, they can't go all the way back to Norfolk to do the training. They need to do it remotely. So that remote learning was always military. It was always military. And then Executive Order 13111 was signed by Clinton. So it's probably over in the Clinton Library, a few miles from where I'm staying, that executive order is sitting out there that like this should be made available to all Americans. And so the SCORM was what underlied like the Chromebooks, and you had a laptop, but it didn't work for phones and wearables and tablets. And again, who would think that you would get your education on a phone? Well, I guess the guy who's invested in TikTok, he might think you get your education on a phone. But so that was this XAPI or Tin Can API. So I think it's really interesting. This was my entry point into blockchain. Not crypto, not coins, tokens, tokenizing children, tokenizing, and now we've gone all the way through to tokenizing consciousness. Right? And your point about the environmentalism is interesting because, again, he's the environmental guy, but he likes the blockchain. So they're going to find ways of offsetting the energy costs on chain. Like they're going to say, oh, well, we need some power to fund the ledger operation, but we're going to get a carbon trading market for putting nanotechnology in the soil and give it to the permaculture people. And so we're going to have some more biochar permaculture that will offset our energy use on the ledger. Now, again, they've already dialed it back because they've said we're no longer doing proof of work. We're doing proof of stake, which is less energy intensive. So they've already got that. But then in some ways, the energy system, it will be like the privacy conversation driving forward the blockchain twins. They'll use the energy hogging nature of the ledger to expand the blockchain into the carbon trading to offset the energy costs on the ledger. And so they'll essentially embed everything in sensor technology to run the technology, which is crazy. But I would just say it's not new, and he knows it's not new because Nicole would tell him. that it's not new.
Yeah.
And the thing is, who was running the ed tech space tied to blockchain? Well, that was all ramping up deeply during the Obama administration, because you and I saw it firsthand.
Right.
We were rolling with that. Like, we knew that was coming. At that point, I was still making little sys maps because I didn't know what it was until they all got disappeared. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this XAPI, and it's linked to OER, and the OER is linked to the guy in Utah and the LDS Church and Silicon Valley and digital identity and transhumanism and Pavel Lux and Tom Vander Ark and, Learn Capital and Greg Morrow, and then we got Evan, and like, whoop, now we're back to Austin and the Supercomputer Center of Blockchaining Children. Like, we knew, and no one's listening. Like, still people aren't listening to us, and but yeah, no.
Well, but wait, they might be, because Tom Vander Ark followed me yesterday on Twitter.
Oh, we have to tweet this to him. Hey, Tom, how's Pavel doing? I remember seeing the first thing with like the transhumanist neuroweb with Pavel Lux. Again, a Russian, like the Skolkovo, Silicon Valley of Russia. Aren't we supposed to be against Russia? Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. They're all working.
Right.
Oh, and Hillary's hanging out over there too. Okay. And so,
Right.
Well, who's in the White House with Obama? Well, that would be Biden. Now, I'm not saying that Biden is totally, like on task with all of his jobs, but at least the job description of vice president would mean that you would kind of know what's going on. And Delaware, because he was, like, I was just trying to get the dates. He was the senator of Delaware since the mid 1970s. Delaware is not a big state. It's no Texas. Delaware is no Texas. It's tiny. He would commute back and forth. This was his story. Oh, I would take the train to DC. So you think he didn't know what was going on with Markell, his close buddy with the governorship, and getting blockchain set up in the state of Delaware for healthcare records and corporate records? No, he totally would have. I mean, if he didn't know, then he was derelict in his duties. So to pretend that somehow Biden isn't up to speed on what blockchain is ridiculous. Then it's clear Bobby doesn't even have the slightest understanding of what blockchain is really about.
Well, and Allison, isn't Bobby talking about all the medical freedom? And I think it's interesting that some of the people that have really come after us hard on this OER and the technology bill and Amplify and Learn Capital they're big time pushers of the medical freedom. And they have no idea that this is happening with the blockchain.
Oh, but see, I think they maybe do. Like, that's the thing. So when
I'm talking about just the front women I'm not saying that,
like Foster Colson, but who's the guy that Colson?
No, I'm talking about just the moms on the ground who are.
But do they want an AI digital twin for the mental wellness of their children?
Not talking about that at all. They're just
they don't know.
They're stuck in their story.
Yeah.
They can't see the big picture, and some of them have kids in public schools, and so they get funded by those who are supporting OER charters and vouchers, and so they're now coming after us because they want to continue that funding.
Oh, because so they left the system over that one issue. And now they feel like their new
there's two medical freedom
linked.
Groups that have been fractured in Texas for vaccine choice, and then there's the Texans vaccine freedom or something like that. It's choice and freedom. But those two groups were divided, and they've split. But the funding is the same. All these groups get co-opted through the money, and the same donors who are pushing school choice charters and technology funding the medical freedom people.
Well, and it's interesting because I'm thinking about how the lockdowns really fueled the homeschool movement.
Yeah, very similar to that, because the homeschool coalitions, those have been divided too. So there's two main camps.
But think about so for a long time there were folks like Alice and can I say Alice's name? Is that all right?
Yeah, Alice Linehan.
Alice Linehan. Like,
she's how we got connected.
I know, exactly. Yeah. Well, I just don't want to pull people in if they don't, if they've anyway,
No.
I just want to be thoughtful about that. I want to acknowledge, right? So there have been groups who have known for a long time, who like know the homeschool communities, know the hijinks that things are getting up to, know this strings attached versus no strings attached issue. And they're very well educated themselves because, again, honestly, if you're unschooling or homeschooling, those folks have looked into things in great detail, generally speaking, the old times homeschool families. Now, then you have the lockdowns, and you've got a bunch of people who are confronted with something right in their face fairly quickly, and then they have to make a decision. And so they make a decision to homeschool, but they don't have this long, thoughtful evolution of it. They're just dropped into this new environment. So they've like churned up the homeschool community between people who were doing traditional, what they understood, you know, you might have been homeschooling in the 80s, what that looked like at the kitchen table with workbooks, with new people who are expecting an online service in their homes. And I can imagine it would be those people who would be tempted if someone said, well, you know what? The government screwed y'all over and ruined your life. Look, now you can get some of their money back and use it the way you want it. And that whole new crew that came in that was manufactured by the lockdowns, I could, like, if I were in their place, like, I could see them being like, got one over on you. Thank you, big government. Give me that money. And they don't know, they're not sophisticated enough to go, wait a minute, there's something more going on. Like, I have some empathy for them because they like, whoever was behind, whatever system, person, whatever was behind enacting this cascade of events, it was very strategic, I think.
Oh, absolutely it was. And in fact, what's so interesting is one of our friends, Ginger Russell, is hosting an event in the Woodlands in a week or so. And the catalyst for the event was that this legislator was mocking her, saying, OER is going to make little communists out of your children. And then he starts to go into this. His name is Steve Toth, and he's from the Woodlands, a legislator. And Steve says, do you know what the number one use for OER is? The Bible. The Bible. That's what they use in these Bible colleges as a resource for the students to learn the Bible. Okay, well.
How many of you guys have heard of OER? How many of you know that this is how the communists are going to take over the world and kill us all? Let me tell you what OER is. OER is a teaching, learning, and research resource that resides in the public domain or has been released under an intellectual property license that permits its use for free. What's the greatest use of OER in the world right now? The Bible. It's the number one means by which universities teach the Bible online. It's a free online course. Texas has developed its own OER. It has nothing to do with UNESCO. If you want to call my office, you can come in and sit down with me. I'll open the hyperlink and you can go through it yourself. And you can look at anything you want. And in the meantime, you will leave. I will give you the hyperlink. You can take it home with you. And you can continue to study it. And if there's anything you find, post it on Facebook. I encourage you to do that. All right? We're in a battle right now for the hearts and minds of our kids. If this was such a bad thing, if this was so liberal, if this was so leftist, then why is it that not one single Democrat voted for it? Why did they all fight it? Why is it that the Texas Tribune right now, the Austin American Statesman right now, are panning to saying that Texas is offering religion and that Texas is getting way too conservative, way over its skis? If this is such a bad thing, then clearly the Democrats would support it. But they're not. They're fighting it tooth and nail. And to say that Brandon, in any way, shape, or form, has done anything to weaken the education code is absolutely dishonest. And again, call my office. I'll make any time available for you. I'm going to do them in hour-long slots. You come in, and I'll open it up for you. and you can see for yourself.
OER is dynamic and modifiable. And the one thing we say about the Bible as Christians is it's the inerrant word of God. Can't change it. You don't want to modify it. And so and then he's mocking Ginger Russell for sounding the alarms about UNESCO open education resources and how these, and part of the reason Steve Toth voted for this OER is because he was going to vote against it. But the night before he told us he was going to vote against it, the next day he changed his mind because they were going to give him a parent portal to see all that woke curriculum. Well, the whole thing about OER is it's dynamic. So your school district could show you, look, it's this wonderful story of Esther from the Bible. And then the next day they can put in, whatever they want. It's dynamic. It's modifiable.
You know what? Can we pause here for a second? And I want to pull up this section about Oral Roberts in Tulsa because there's a bunch of Texas overlap, and I think we need to talk about this. I hadn't really thought about that, so I'm gonna.
Okay, good.
Okay, so you were just saying that. Can you remind me? It was Toth was the guy's name.
Steve Toth, Toth.
Yeah,
he's a legislator in the Woodlands and a former pastor.
So in the Woodlands, again, we've been talking with Sean about the forestry stuff and the Wood Wide Web, but the Woodlands is a planned community outside of Houston, I believe. And when Jason and I were going through on that trip, we stopped in Houston. We didn't make it to the Woodlands, but it's backed by Howard Hughes Real Estate Development. Now, I think he may have died before the Woodlands was built, but, Howard Hughes had a lot of money in real estate. And think about a lot of his real estate money was in hotels in Las Vegas, which is casinos and gambling. So we're back to it's not quite Yass's poker gambling, but it's gaming and gambling. And of course he had a lot of other stuff going on, Howard Hughes. But I think it's interesting that Woodlands area was a Howard Hughes smart, intentional community. And it's an old one. I think it dates to the 70s or 80s. It's been around for a long time. But these ideas of planned mixed development communities are really central. But when what he's saying is the Bible is one of the key uses for OER, well, one, if you look at UNESCO and OER, you realize that is not actually accurate. But it is interesting that is his choice because this is the map that from the trip Jason and I did in Arkansas, and we tried really hard, but we didn't get through it, and then that kind of stalled out. But on that trip, we stopped by to visit a friend in Tulsa, and we know from Julianne Romanello that Tulsa, because that was one of my first engagements in blockchain was flying in, and I met you in person for the first time, and I drove up and I did several presentations in Tulsa for Julianne, and it was about social impact finance and blockchain and education. Now this was, it would have been Martin Luther King Day, so it was January 2020. 2020,
right before
we had no idea. It was like 6 weeks later and the world blew up. We just did not have any idea how close we were to what was about to happen. But so it was
I want to say you wrote that article, The Tale of Two Blockchains, Dallas and Tulsa, and so very significant piece that you put out, and I've shared it often because that same the commit partnership is in that building, the Pegasus Park where we visited. So yes, this is the article.
Me and Julianne, and there's a woman, I think she might have been connected to Oral Roberts, I'm not sure. But yeah, and there were, big auditorium, there were maybe, I'm thinking it's more like 15 people. Like this was the audience for blockchain education. I don't know that we could do much better at this point either. And, it's kind of a bummer.
Well, you know what? Those Houston people, last time I did a talk in Houston, they packed a room. So we're hoping that this deal with Ginger and
this is, because to me, this is actually people of faith. It's what I'm saying. I'm not against faithful people. I'm not against, for me, my preference is that we have a world that there's not a one world religion, and that we be respectful, and that you authentically pursue your faith, and then within the institutions of your faith, you hold those in charge accountable to what your faith beliefs are, because they're all about to be questioned. And many faiths say, like, when you're getting towards the end, many leaders in faith groups will betray the central tenets of the faith, and that's out there. So, and I'm not asking people to like walk away. I'm just saying hold people accountable. Like know what's right according to how you understand.
You don't impose it. Like Alice Linehan always says, you propose your faith, you don't impose it.
Right.
And God's not going to force himself on you. It has to be, you have to come to it on your own.
Yeah.
And it's free will.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, me personally, I feel like a benevolent God like would not want just it all to be one. Different people have different opinions. That's mine. I just would prefer people to be respectful and not hurt one another over these issues. But anyway, so do you want a blockchain religion? Essentially, what he just said was if he's saying OER is the way of teaching the Bible, that's ultimately going to be blockchaining the Bible, because that's what OER is. It's turning things into digital information and then putting it on blockchain. And then OER is engaging in digital media. Now, I have another friend who, grew up in the faith of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, these folks have been on the cutting edge of media and film and things for a long time because it's a global ministry, just like this Oral Roberts is a global ministry. So they've been doing the digital stuff for a long time. Now, it kind of bumps up against mesmerism. It kind of bumps up against some of this electromagnetic frequency spiritualism. How comfortable are people with this? Like, if you can, this Oral Roberts, they were doing magic mirrors in the dorms to watch the kids, the students, and based on their affect, insert Bible verses to them on the mirror. Is that how you're doing the Bible? Is that how we've agreed to do the Bible now? I mean, I don't know. I would find that level of surveillance and having an AI involved. I mean, it's not like there's someone sitting in the counseling office shooting Bible verses. It's all computerized. That feels really uncomfortable. Like, did God invite the AI?
Adults. He's talking about adults, and what we're fighting is for children. So it's not apples to apples. And to mock somebody who has been trying to protect children for a number of years, she and her mother, it's disingenuous, and he knows better. But
I want to say, like, this connection to Oral Roberts is important. So when we visited our friend in Tulsa, this is not the 2020, this is when Jason and I went. My friend and I, we went to Oral Roberts because I missed it the first time around, and it has this atomic culture. It's like the campus is 1960s, and again, Oral Roberts is affiliated with Pentecostalism and televangelism. And he actually had his own hospital system on the campus. I think that went out of business. But for whatever reason, Oral Roberts is a center of this blockchain education and global learning. And I think it's connected to the global ministry, which here's virtual reality stars in Oral Roberts Global Learning Center. Telepresence robots enable Oral Roberts University students to tour the campus and take classes from anywhere in the world. And so global ministries, this is the thing, and Pentecostalism is very much about this. ORU on leading edge of blockchain revolution in education. This is 2018, right? So Oral Roberts is really central to all of this. They were hosting summits. Here's somebody, Jonathan Armstrong of Cordery. I think maybe did Cordery have a connection to Oral Roberts? But they're promoting themselves as a global ministry of blockchain education. And so I came across in my research, this is in 2018. Again, I've been doing this for a minute. The Education Conference Network, Blockchain in Education, Blockchain Essentials in Education Conference, May of 2018 at Oral Roberts University Global Learning Center in Tulsa. Now, what I've said before is that it is my current hypothesis, and I'm willing to, I'm not saying it's definitely correct, but the thing that I'm encountering right now is this idea of digital information fields and this sense of through different methods, whether that be mental discipline, mindfulness, meditation, altered substances, praying, other things that people are able to disengage from the limits of a physical body and access information that's beyond our normal ability to access it. And I think that's a central part of Pentecostalism and the faith in speaking in tongues. And I've mentioned before that Neil Stephenson's book, Snow Crash, that was where he invented the word the metaverse. This glossolalia, the speaking in tongues, is a central feature. And in the story, and again, it's fiction, but it centers on televangelism and a rich cable TV mogul who manages refugees through frequency and calls them antenna heads. And this speaking in tongues is part of it, and it's connected to something called the Namshub of Enki, a Sumerian world where concept where a word spoken with magical force. Okay. And so, and this was all, and the guy was in Houston in the story. I mean, the story was sort of set in Texas, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds like, what was his name? Bob Buford, the cable guy, and Peter Drucker setting up, and he was funding a Baptist Bible college to go do archaeology in Sumeria to like get more information. Now, again, this is all fiction, but Neil Stephenson started off his career at this SIGGRAPH event in Dallas. And so you just wonder how much of it is fact or fiction. But if you imagine that somehow this idea of an out-of-body experience that has a spiritualized component to it that may not simply be educating you, but that you are an agent of accessing information and bringing it into this reality somehow. It feels like that's what it's about. And so in that way, Oral Roberts being a centerpiece for this is pretty typical. And I didn't realize the extent to which Pentecostalism, it was like the fourth largest growing Christian denomination globally. Now, a lot of it's in the global South and other places, and I didn't realize Pentecostalism was that robust, but it's very much growing outside the United States.
Do you see also this sponsor of Oracle? Remember when Billy Graham, it was one of the later speeches before he died, that he was at Oracle in that summit, and he was speaking about how, gosh, can't y'all come up with some sort of program for morality and anyway, I thought it was fascinating. He was talking to the Oracle executives.
Wow.
Can't people at Oracle come up with a way to digitize morality? Something like that. Yeah. And then Tulsa is interesting too because of the right now we've got in the news, there are all these pastors who have stepped down from these mega churches, one after the other. They're falling like dominoes. And a big one from a huge mega church in, I think it's in Grapevine but it's called Gateway. And Robert Morris came from Tulsa. Gateway, right. So he came from Tulsa, and that's where he was molesting from 12 to 16. He was living, they would house these pastors, and he was setting up church plants all over. And so these nice families would host him in their house. And one of them, he molested the girl, and it came out. But I think we're allowed to know this stuff now that's been suppressed by the churches because we're moving into a new phase.
Well, there'll be an AI church, right? Because there won't be fallible like humans.
Church, so you'll get your church virtually from whatever source you want. You'll tap into whoever you follow, and you'll just do remote church.
Well, wait a minute. Do you remember when we were at the Mormon Transhumanist Conference? One of the speakers said religion as an API.
Yes.
He literally said that.
Centralizing God. So then he's accessible to everyone through technology. And the Mormon Church is ahead of the game in this because they have been doing mission fields, mission trips, setting up the young people. Women have to do domestic, and the men do the international. That's how they set up the Mormon mission trips that they have to do as a rite of passage. And so think about the connection. And now they're big drivers in the virtual space and using technology to advance God and decentralize God so that anybody can access God and bring equity through their tapping into these devices and tapping into the divine and sacred, the space there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot to think about because, again, I don't think people understand the technologies yet. They don't. So I'm just going to pull it. This is Michael Matthews, who was the Associate Vice President of Innovation and Tech at Oral Roberts, and just some of the highlights of his sort of introductory letter for that conference in 2018. It said that they have micro innovations spanning from teleportation robots, wearable educational watches, teaching avatars, trademarked ORU GeoVision fluid technology, in a 500,000 square foot augmented reality environment. It says this people will have freedom from anywhere in the world to digitally unlock academic content. And then he goes on to say the blockchain for education will ultimately become the digital vending machine in the cloud.
Well, you talked a lot about the digital vending machine and with Cardano too, talking about blockchain and how they blockchained all the 5 million people in Ethiopia. And everything was included, their academic transcripts, their voting, and this will tie into with.
Well, how will you know who's worthy to have a job, Lynn, if you haven't blockchained it all?
Worthy, yeah. So
well, think about that. If you have an AI pastor and the AI pastor is deciding if you're worthy.
Remember, Allison, that my former pastor from the mega church where I used to go, he was at the Global Silicon Valley speaking with Michael Moe. They're friends. Michael Moe, the founder of Global ASU GSV Summit. That's ASU, the largest Arizona State University, the largest public university in the nation. And ASU Global Silicon Valley Summit now has brought its way to Dallas. And this guy, Michael Moe, who's doing the Brave New World of Education, all about education technology. He suddenly has my former pastor, wow, as a speaker, along with Bill Gates and the founder of Teach for America. I mean, all this it's intersecting with the faith communities, and it's intersecting with the technology and the children. It's intersecting with our money, finances.
Everything is converging.
It's all converging with the cryptocurrency and these
the smart contracts. The smart contracts is the stuff.
Yeah.
The Peter Drucker being the management consultant theorist, but then essentially creating the Christian megachurch movement, is that like the idea of these mega churches is almost like they've become corporate entities, but it's not simply ideologically speaking like capitalism versus socialism. It's a super organism. It's these identifiable collectives. So the collective isn't just, it's transmitting the idea of programmable consciousness in the simplicity of agents in an anthill or a termite mound or a beehive that can make amazingly complex emergent properties from their individual actions, but then embedding that within corporate structures, embedding that within faith structures, embedding that within learning organizational structures. It's the same, but we don't have a language. It is like this NAMSHUB. If you don't have a language to talk about it like that, you're not going to talk about it. You're only going to talk about it in the ways which are like culture war ways. And that just dumbs everybody down.
Values and values.
Yeah. Well, and that could be math, right? You could assign each value some number, yes or no, 0 or 1, and then just run it like a punch card. Literally, I added to a talk I did just the other day. I was revisiting the guy who was talking about human weather and doing grammatical analysis. This was on biofield tuning. But he was saying he was doing linguistic analysis, and he could sort of essentially capture your soul as numbers. It's just boring numbers. And I was like, well, because he said language is the only thing that really is on the internet. But if you start to put wearables on the internet with your biofield information, then you could do your soul is just biofield numbers on the internet, just reducing everything down to a system, but not to make them all the same. That's, I think, what the resistance doesn't get. They think the goal is homogeneity. I'm like, no, the goal is hyper informational tagging and then sending you out for a task in this interdimensional space. Like, they want to build teams so that they have lots of, hashtagged hyperlinked systems that they know which agent to put on which job, which micro task. It's not to make everybody the same.
This, seeing this where it says who's attending, So this triggers me because the second failed political race I had was Dallas County Community College District 2 years ago, and part of the impetus for me running was because I found that they were doing the blockchain wallets on all of the community college district students. So they uploaded all the records from 1965 till now on the Greenlight Credentials digital wallet for lifelong learning badges.
Since when?
What?
Since how long back?
Since 1965, with no informed consent. So my husband went there. My kids have taken community college courses. So there's 7 colleges, and they've got these huge swaths of land that they bought, back a long time ago when it was cheap. But they changed the name. This is interesting because I know you had sounded the alarms on the 23 or 4 campuses that Boston Consulting Group came in to close in Philly.
Yeah.
Right. So
this was not community colleges; those were just regular schools.
No, it's just school campus, K-12 campuses, right? Yeah.
Well,
okay. So
schools.
BCG,
we're in the city, so it's like buildings mostly than a campus.
Buildings. Yeah. Okay. So BCG is interesting because BCG was hired by Dallas County Community College District to consolidate all of those campuses into one Dallas College. So now they call it Dallas College.
So this is a superorganism. It's a superorganism.
Yes, the superorganism, and BCG was paid $18 million to do that. Well, that was important for them to centralize it into one Dallas College so that they could streamline the whole process of uploading their.
They got all the data. They were able to get it in one swoop. They didn't have to go into agreement.
Yeah, they didn't have these individual because they don't want the individual authority and autonomy. They have to have it in this one system, but they used a ruse. Oh, well, if you go get your transcript, you can't. You graduate from this one or that one, you can't interchange and go to different ones, whatever. They take a legitimate problem and give a counterfeit solution. But this is the other thing that's important is that Joe Biden's wife, Jill, doctor, there was like big controversy.
Right, yeah.
Dr. Jill Biden.
She was the community
college.
college.
Don't forget Dr. Jill Biden. Well, what she did her thesis on, her doctorate, it was community colleges, and she's come to Dallas College and she spoke at virtual. I think it was a virtual commencement speech. But Dallas College, so they partnered with not only some colleges in the state, but also Dallas College and Dallas ISD and my kids' school district where they went, Richardson ISD. And so they're doing the blockchain wallets. They're doing the Dallas County Promise. And the kids have to commit to this promise that they're going to fill out FAFSA and what do you call it? The financial aid documents. So this is just another data grab, and it puts them all on this system. It's a forced entrance.
And the FAFSA has family information too, right? Like, isn't it income and all of that?
Yes, because they can do both parents and students.
Yeah.
So it's a double dipping. So anyway, just an interesting thing that the document that I found on Dallas College and the Greenlight Credentials deal is going to be scaled nationwide. So that's why they're and they were able to do a huge bill through the Commit partnership and the Goldman Sachs guy Todd.
And when did that start?
That is now, the funding is finally coming. And so what's funny is my opponent, they went after her and put up a guy to run against her. So I ended up voting for my opponent this past time because I knew that she
at least started to know.
She finally knew the agenda. It was like, hello, I tried to clue you in. You're running. And she's like, okay, now they're coming after me. I get it now. Okay.
She probably doesn't get the interdimensional speaking in tongues through a telepresence robot part.
She's an anesthesiologist. She's totally credentialed to not see this, but she gets it now. And so but the importance is the funding that Todd Williams was able to write the bill and steer the funding for community colleges. So now we have this windfall coming to the community colleges, which of course, declining in enrollment, just like the public schools are. But it's not about that. It's not.
They're not going to be physically going to those campuses anymore. Like they're going to, it's not. They're going to be
bots
in the
are
game.
enrolled. They can't even manage all of that. There's not even real people enrolled.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I digress.
But it's interesting. I was just thinking of the timeline. So this is 2018, and folks from Dallas County Community College are over in Tulsa. talking about blockchain education. So would that have been before the Boston Consulting report?
Yeah, this is old. If they're calling
Yeah.
it DCC,
So they were already like planning this stuff out before the report was just
well
to
in
give
advance, because
legitimization.
DCCD became Dallas College. That would have been years ago.
Okay. Well, and then there's others. So there's, Oklahoma Baptist and, some regional schools, Southwestern Oklahoma State. But then there's Syracuse University, right? So that's prominent. There's a lot going on at Syracuse. University of British Columbia. Now, I know University of British Columbia is in Vancouver, and they're deeply involved in virtual reality OER. Okay. So, imagine, and again, I have a friend who was telling me about like augmented reality Bible stories that the LDS Church is putting out, like the Tree of Life, I think, and things like that. Maybe I'm not exactly saying it correctly, but the church, the LDS Church, is involved in developing multimedia, faith-based content. So you could see how virtual reality OER might go with your Bible study or whatever. And then you've got the Tecnológico de Monterrey, which is in Mexico. So that's kind of an interesting...
LDS Church is a little different than most faiths, because the digital component and the way that you ascend, you actually expand your stars in heaven through your donations, your mission work, you're having children, like you earn, I guess, more celestial credits. And so that's why they're more open to this digital piece than some of the other faiths that may be a little bit more natural or organic and not digital.
But I think the televangelism goes back to the 60s with Oral Roberts, like the early days of television. So I think it's just, it's different. Like there's different levels of, I had like a great aunt who, when in her older ages, would tune in on television. I can't remember which one it was, but there are many people for whom that online, and then my gosh, now it's, not the digital TV stuff. It's, you've got all of that on videos, like YouTube videos and probably apps and other things for, I'll pull up the Drucker stuff in a minute and we can kind of look at Buford's.
Yeah. It's definitely in the Christian churches, but it's just a little different, because they will say, well, God can use, it's just a tool. God can use it for his glory, and they'll say, oh, we can use the technology for good. So it's just a little different the way that they frame it than the LDS.
Well, and I would say if people are having the conversations, at this point, like I'm not in a position of telling people how they should run their prayerful spiritual lives. That's not where I'm at, but just know what you're dealing with, because it's pretty complicated. So the fact that Salesforce was there, it's really important to me. And
Salesforce undergirds the work that they do with the data harvesting with the Commit partnership, because they have data sharing agreements with all the schools in the Metroplex in Dallas, Fort Worth. And then Boston Consulting Group was embedded in a lot of those data sharing agreements. And Salesforce is a partner with them in the way that they harvest that.
Okay. And so Phil Marney, who is the Salesforce contact, he became the vice president of innovation in 2017, is on the board of Learning Economy. Now that's in Colorado. Well, it's not just in Colorado. They have a footprint, I believe, in Boulder, but they were working in South Florida and the state of Colorado and maybe Singapore. But that's all of the tokens and the avatars. And I've done some stuff about Learning Economy too. But it was interesting to me that right before he joined Salesforce, he was the former chief technology officer of the University of Texas system. So he was the one that was probably getting this all. You talk about the revolving door. So he was getting it set up. And then the next year,
the system is big time involved in in setting up the data system, longitudinal data systems in Texas.
Yeah, and I think here I just have this is Stewards of Change, the data trust going in with the National Interoperability Collaborative. This is part of the Pegasus map, but it's not particularly Texas stuff here. Here, using atomic data to power new models of education in higher tech, University of Texas system, Phil Marney. So there you go. This is 2016, the Civitas Learning Summit. Oh, I will say also on this, Ellucian was part of that, and Ellucian is a big player in the education record space. You know, and if anybody out there from my education world is still listening to me, like I'm really still kind of honked off about the whole Diane Ravitch stuff, because I don't blame her for the choices that her son makes in terms of what his job is, like Joe Ravitch with Rain Group, RAINE. And isn't that an interesting name now that we understand like how water and everything fits into all of this and microfluidics? But he was working with people in augmented reality and alternative credentialing. And this is way back in like 2017 maybe, that I really was trying to put her on task for, at least if you don't understand it, go ask your son, because he's making his money off of it. Yeah. Right? Like, it's too important. If you're really here, and all of those badass teachers associations and all of those people, and this is why I kind of threw my hands up with the unions and the progressives and all of it, they weren't serious. They were really only interested in living in a tiny little story with the heroes that were given to them. And I just couldn't tolerate it, because like, once you know that they're gonna put kids on blockchain and measure them in utero and possibly measure their compliance and spirituality and send them off into some sort of astral projection game land, courtesy of Ari Emanuel, that's not okay. And so like, grown-ups have to, you know, get their acts together and do the work to be responsible, you know. Or if you're not, then just go and don't pretend that you're doing anything. Like, don't pretend that you're making a difference, because you're not, because you're just not. You're not doing it. So anyway, these are some of the things from Cromartie's report about capturing user activities in these digital systems with Salesforce. So this is all the stuff that was going to go on to blockchain. I mean, all of the people, you know, when you were in those hearings in Austin with the blockchain task force, they must have known this. I mean, their guy, the CTO of the UT system, was setting it all up.
Next is Lynn Davenport.
Hi, thank you. Lynn Davenport, I live in Dallas. Since Abbott has declared that he wants to be the leader in blockchain as far as the state is concerned, it will be used to further the agenda of blockchain in education. A blockchain technology in Dallas, it's what they call a life locker or life transcript. The enormous power that company can have. You see how the concerns that the parents have, that can be used for vaccine history, that can be used for mental health data, which they have an app for. It can be used for your transcripts, your credentials. All of that can be, that power is given to one company in Dallas ISD, which is being scaled statewide. And so it's through Dallas College, through other community colleges. And so here's an example that is happening in Ethiopia. You all are familiar with Cardano. Cardano's Charles Hoskinson has talked about putting 5 million children, Ethiopian children, on blockchain so that their whole life is tracked on this. It is going to be scaled to all of Ethiopia, so to 100 million people. So the same thing is going to happen in Texas, because Mike Morath was appointed by Abbott. Mike Morath is connected to the company that is doing these blockchain wallets for students. And we know that that Todd Williams was listed on Mike Morath's application to be the commissioner, and he is the founder of Commit. And Commit was the one that chose a company in Dallas, Greenlight Credentials, to be the blockchain provider. Let's just say that both parties are in on this with him. And looking at Cardano's Atala Prism is what it's called. It will connect healthcare, education, voting. We know that I know you all have probably heard about voting on blockchain as a means to secure our elections. That is not a good idea. And then digital ID is essentially what it is. And so we could be opening up the potential to have all of our lives being tracked and traced through this technology. And then skills and badges and being able to verify your credentials. All of that will eventually be on blockchain if we allow that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll have to go. I know Civitas rings a bell. I've gone down that whole rabbit hole with them. It being
it's in Austin. Yeah.
So. Right. They're based in Austin. And I forget who works there that I've studied, but that there's no question. I mean, big things are happening in Austin, not just under the pink granite.
And I'll close out with this part, because I think we got into this through like the this was the OER spirituality, because OER is blockchain. We go back and look at our OER presentations, and that's well documented. But this is talking about a mobile app
Wait,
to a
say that
smart
again,
mirror.
Allison. OER is blockchain.
Yeah, it is blockchain. That's how it is, the ledger system.
It's a piece of the ledger system, so they have to have the kids in this system through open education resources. It's not, see what they keep denying is that it's not technology or online, because they're going to print the stuff and the school
No,
districts
that's
will
a
get
lie.
money.
They're not going to print this
It's
stuff.
a total lie, and you could, if you look
They're
at the
going to give you
people-
a TikTok app, and Jeffrey Yass is going to call that school choice.
Right.
I mean, that's
So
what it is. They're going to be like, here, do some dance moves for your kinetic. Oh, we need your green light, needs your heart rate information. Do some, let me see some moves, and then they'll do it in front of the magic mirror here. We'll talk about the magic mirror. That's what an OER is. Put your wearable on. Yeah, do the thing, sing some songs. Right?
And you're not making, that's not conjecture. Like, they literally have a press release for the Cooper Aerobics Center, and the father of aerobics, Kenneth Cooper, partnering with Greenlight Credentials to then track the physical fitness data from the children. So this isn't,
I mean, it's kind of silly, but it's all the pieces are there.
yes, and this is just a piece of the wallet. I mean, all aspects of this child. I mean, when they say the whole child,
It's
we talk
everything.
about this a lot.
The soul.
They mean the whole child, and accessing all aspects of a child: heart, mind, body, soul, everything.
Well, so this is the other piece. So this is, I have a lot in here that I'm not going to be able to cover, but the Radical Exchange, Radical Exchange has ties to Oakland, and I'm sure that if Nicole was on the ground floor of smart contracts, she knows Glenn Weil, she knows Radical Exchange.
Maybe the first person ever to be potentially in the Oval Office with direct expertise in AI and in blockchain. Not enough people are having the conversation about how vital that is going to be to the rest of our lives.
This is mind-blowing. This is like a huge deal. And
most of the world doesn't even know the first thing about it, right?
yeah, I guess not. I mean, they ought to.
They ought to.
Because it's transformative.
Did AI or did blockchain come into your professional or intellectual life first?
They were around the same time, honestly. I was at Stanford and part of various blockchain-related legal circles. There's also the patents of blockchain, and which I was involved in, and thinking about how to, balance open source IP versus closed sourced IP for the blockchain. And so, 2015, this was really taking off. I hosted a conference that Vitalik Buterin was on a beam. Do you remember the beam machines?
No.
Snowden was on one once. He very famously, if you remember, there are these robots with a screen.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see just the head, and the robot can move around. Yeah. Vitalik did. Mm-hmm. Before he launched Ethereum officially, he was zooming around one of my conferences, and I'm an early buyer of Ethereum. So that's me, just being real, right?
They're working on, I did this whole article called Soulbound Tokens, Trust Networks in California's Big Test. And I was being prickly with, I can't remember the woman's name. It was Glenn Weil, who was the Microsoft's Octopest, and Vitalik Buterin, Pooja Olhaver. And supposedly she was the one who wrote this white paper on soulbound tokens. It's a thing. Look it up. It's not NFTs. Soulbound tokens, you can't transfer them. So if you go to a conference, they'll give you a soulbound token. Your digital twin will be made out of soulbound tokens. So what I'm trying to talk about is, and it goes back to antiquity, which again goes back to the Athena and all of the stuff going on in Texas and Dallas with the Athena stuff, and Rome and Old Parkland and, Ridge Lane and the Laurel Wreaths. You wouldn't think it goes back this far, but if you look in classical antiquity, there was these were practices of using children as go-betweens between the real world and the spirit world. And it was
so that's what by soulbound tokens. So what you're suggesting is that the children are a bridge between this so accessing them before they become adults.
Yeah.
And
so it's
tapping
their
into the soul.
imagination. So if you, and again, I will say at this point, this is my hypothesis. So I'm not saying I have all of this nailed down, because I don't, it's very hard to find anywhere that they'll just tell you. It's almost by inference that you, like, why
because
are
they
they
have to have
calling it a
people doing
soul-bound
all
token?
there are people who do different roles, but
Right.
that.
But if you
the
look
sum-
up ancient Rome and the daimon, Daimon, that is this, it's the trichotomy, and again, the Trinity River in Dallas, the trichotomy between body, soul, and spirit. The body is temporary, the spirit is immortal, and the soul is the bridge in between. And in the classical antiquity, like you wouldn't have the capacity to interface with the gods, the Olympian gods, but you could use on behalf of your daimon as a go-between, like in some communication, right? And so if we look at the fact that they're building digital twins, their intention is to build education digital twins and health digital twins and embed all real assets into the blockchain and tether everything in. Everything's going to have a tether. It's an artificial energetic tether that's not original to source. However you understand God, it's not original to that. It's a digital version of that. And I would hazard a guess that it would be less than, because anything engineered is less than what the original equipment is. They would essentially use children to channel, like as either doing astral projection or inviting something to come into their body and speak. And so to bring information from a realm that is not what we commonly understand as our real realm and bring it in. Now, I think that this is very much linked to the human potential movement and to Esalen and to SRI and remote viewing and astral projection. And it's not just modern. These are ancient practices that go into deep meditation and chi and all of that, right? So I don't mean to paint it a certain way, but I think this is what is happening, is that the children are being tasked as agents into a different network of information space. And they will be heroes, right? Sandifer and the Acton Academy and the Hero's Journey micro schools, right? That are tech heavy, but not the bad Chinese social emotional learning, the good capitalist kind of social emotional learning. We're going to train these kids to be the heroes, to be the space travelers, to go into space and bring the stuff back. And then when we bring it back, it'll all be on the blockchain so we can sort it out and have the AI find the stuff it's looking for. Because we're going to send all the children out into these spaces. And I don't think that this is a stretch.
No,
I think they don't say soulbound token and not mean it. They mean it, but the physics of that twin is different. You can't physically go there. You're a bag of water, crystalline water. You can't get in information space. It's like Flat Stanley. Lynn, did your kids do Flat Stanley?
No, but I know what it is.
Like, that was a thing when my kid was in elementary school 20 years ago. There was all these books. Flat Stanley can go in, look, he can go in a letter and you can mail him to your aunt, and then she can take a picture of him by the St. Louis Arch, and then she can mail it to her brother in Washington DC, and they can take a picture of him by the Capitol, and look at all the places Flat Stanley can go because he's flat.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. So do you have the tweet from Berggruen where it was talking about values and everyone's assigned a value and they have worth, and the Berggruen tweet that you
know what?
featured?
Hold on. Let me close this one out and I'll pull it up. Okay, so you were asking about the tweet. So this was a tweet. I was trying to engage with Glenn Weil and Pooja Olhaver about, like, if the soulbound tokens are actually hashtags that are linked to social impact finance and digital twins. And they're like, we don't know anything about that. Like, no, we're proposing the opposite, which I do know that they know what they're doing. So then I tweeted, this is a tweet to them of Nicholas Berggruen's tweet from March 23rd, 2021. Nicholas Berggruen, again, of the Berggruen Institute. And it's almost like the mini Davos kind of thing. He's a hedge fund guy, and his family was in art. His brother's still in art. And he was, for a while, I guess, the world's richest homeless billionaire or something. He would jet set around. And he was working on magic, actually. He was working with somebody from UCLA on early modern magic. So, yeah, this is metaphysics. Alchemy, it's soul alchemy. So Nicholas Berggruen, each individual life is an asset valuable just by being. This as a participant in the economy and as data. In addition, everyone is likely to become a recipient of some form of universal basic income or universal basic capital in the future. Therefore, individuals could be tokenized on the blockchain. I will repeat that. Therefore, individuals could be tokenized on the blockchain, unlocking their potential economic value. It may sound utopian, yet it might be a financing mechanism to fund people throughout their lives if used within reasonable limits. You could also imagine each citizen having a minimum value as a share of the nation's economic pie. That threshold could be underwritten by governments and by their worth as data. Thus, all are stakeholders in the economy, no matter what, and can be actors in the economy throughout their lives. And then he has a link.
So this is very important, because one argument that we have against, we as the people that I advocate with, is that people who are against universal health care, universal basic income, and that sort of government entitlement or subsidy, but they're okay with universal school choice. That's the language that they keep using for school choice, is universal. And I believe that is where we are headed in Texas. I see all the signs of the same people who are pushing for blockchain technologies, the same people who are pushing for universal school choice, the same people who are fighting, universal basic income. They're okay with this blockchain technology. But then there are also people who are for blockchain, like the Commit Partnership. They might be for universal basic income. But what's interesting is we had a ruling from our Attorney General saying that you can't do UBI, and there was a Houston UBI initiative called Uplift. Well, he makes
Isn't that
rulings.
interesting with what I'm talking about? Again,
Uplift.
This idea of going out of body, astral projection. Think about the Uplift charter schools, the Pegasus. Like, I think the Pegasus is like a shift from the Medusa turning things into stone, which is reality, into the blood squirts out, and then it becomes the Pegasus, which is the flying away and separating from the earth. I think that's why Dallas's thing is Pegasus, is that they knew that we are supposed to somehow separate from, again, in my opinion, I don't think it's to rid ourselves of a physical body. I don't think it's a permanent, because there's something in our collective intelligence that involves our microbiome. Like, we are a collective of all of these critters, that I think the critters have a different access to different information processing in the quantum biology that is necessary for this. So there's some sort of two-part process where the physics of the twin goes into information space, gets stuff out, and then it becomes processed within the body. Like, it's like a two-part.
There's a lot of talk about the gut biome, parasites, gut health, and
because they want to terraform your gut, but they'd like to clear it out first. So all the wellness people who are focused on, well, let me tell you about your Morgellons, let me tell you about the detox protocols, let me tell you blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, there's a lot of stuff that's in you that's supposed to be in you. There's a lot of stuff that says the body is intelligent and it'll figure stuff out, and you don't need to buy 50 billion supplements from a bunch of supplement sellers. But two, even if you thought you were clearing it out, then what do you think is going to come back in? Like, is there a plan? Like, are you going to be inoculated with fecal transplants from clean people? And is that what the wellness company and McCullough is going to sell you? Right? It's like, we have verified anti-jab, fecal transplants to give you the optimal. What do you have, a blockchain registry of microbiome optimization? I mean, you could totally see it. It would the nutraceutical, right? You go on an app and you find I don't mean to discount this, because there are people who medically do really need it it's a thing. But if what you're saying is wholesale, a bunches of people who don't really have, ongoing healthcare providers just clear themselves out and open themselves up to something else, I think those little things that are in you and on you are a really big part of this equation. I mean, to the point that sometimes I'm thinking, am I just an exoskeleton walking my microbiome around? I don't know.
I don't know either, but
it's a lot to think about. I'm not saying I know the things, but I know that you just shouldn't unilaterally just
Yeah.
Pause. People should just pause.
Well, you look at the
like,
way that they're supposedly tracking viruses and things. I mean, they've actually tapped into the sewer system, and they do test that in Dallas. I mean, they're absolutely.
Well, Verily is a big part of it.
What is
Verily, the wastewater
right? You've written
from
about
Google,
this, yeah.
right?
So it's not.
It's
so
not
for
like
those who are
Nicole
like,
doesn't
whoa,
know
where
that.
did y'all just go? This is based on the things that we see just locally. So just trying to understand where we're headed. But back to Berggruen. So in thinking about Cardano, saying who is worthy, and if everybody's assigned a value, and you upload your whole life onto these blockchain wallets.
The flagship of which is a deal that we have closed with the Ministry of Education, containing 5 million students, using a technology called PRISM, integrated in the Cardano blockchain. Every one of these students will have a digital ID called a DID, and that DID carries with it metadata that will travel with them throughout their entire academic life, and like those who left Facebook's clutches of the university into the real world, will actually follow them into the economic world. So as they graduate, as they go into the economy, eventually this infrastructure can be used for property, for payments, for voting, and all other manners of their economic life. And what's beautiful about this evergreen deal is it's extensible. Our priorities and goals are directly aligned with the vision and priorities and goals of the Ethiopian government. In a recently published doctrine of Ethiopia 2025, there was a bold vision to digitize the country on 4 pillars, the first of which was a national ID system. It is our belief that the work we have done here with PRISM and Cardano for these 5 million students will inevitably grow to be an inspiration and perhaps the system for 107 million Ethiopians, allowing them for the first time to globalize on equal terms with the United States, the European Union, China, and other modern developed economies. In addition to this system goes far beyond just identity. Our belief is that it can be used to help people procure jobs, to help people prove their skills.
And you can vote, and you can have your academic records and your health and your mental, everything on your lifelong learning locker.
Because the system can verify credentials, the system can verify certificates, the system can be used for a litany of activities which are required for people to understand who are credible actors to deal with and who have earned the right to have a job.
And they're doing this in Dallas ISD, Dallas College, Richardson ISD, scaling it nationwide. And then you've got Nicholas Berggruen saying, look, it sounds utopian, but hey, maybe we could do this mechanism where we can just fund you for breathing, for existing, and you can use it within reasonable limits. And then everybody has assigned a minimum value. So you can then, and then if you make things to where it's unattainable to have, a house and food and a job, and then that's where we're headed. I mean, you can see the squeezing of our resources and the cost of living and all of that is happening in every major city.
We want to create a world where houses are made a lot more like cars or iPhones. We can make disaster relief modules, workforce housing. Casita is not for a particular demographic, it's more for psychographic. We wanted to create something that we call moods.
We wanted to be the primary interface between the user and the Casita. When we first started, we created this board. We called it our IoT board. And the idea was we had a wide range of categories of devices that we knew we needed to integrate together to provide this overall experience inside the Casita. So this is the low voltage enclosure box. It houses the brains of the Casita. And one of the unique things about it is that we have complete programmable control over it so that if we need to remotely power devices on and off, we have the ability to do it.
Long term, we are aiming to go ultra dense. And that means taking these micro units, putting them on small pieces of land in the urban core and going up. The ultimate mission of Casita is to solve housing for all. Casita is a solution not just for micro living, but for living in general.
I see it lining up. I see Texas as being, and not to make everything about Texas, because you and I have been collaborating.
Texas is big, though, and they have a lot of kids, and they have a lot of poor kids.
We do, and the border is a big piece of this too, is that the number of children that come over per year that the public school then absorbs is unsustainable. And then the the results are failing schools, which they then take over.
Before we close out on the blockchain stuff, or the Oral Roberts University and the blockchaining the Bible stuff, I did want to point out, so this is a story about their introduction of these smart mirrors into the dorm rooms at Oral Roberts. And I mean, it's fairly recent. I think this is 2020. So it says at Oral Roberts University, IT is taking XAAX to the nth degree, moving from a mobile app offering concierge-like set of devices for students to introducing a 52-inch by 22-inch smart mirror to deliver all IT and university services from the campus. So your mirror is like your concierge. But then this is an image, if people are just listening and they're not looking, it's this looks like an older, this looks like an adult, but is staring off like dreamily into the mirror, and then it has 2 Corinthians verse 2 Corinthians 4 verse 8-9 says, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not..." Anyway, and then it goes, but they're feeding Bible verses based on people who the mirror says look depressed. And, we just have to wonder, is that what, and then this kind of links on, I put this in, this links on to that bioenergy video that I just did, human emotion recognition, analysis, and transformation by the bioenergy field in smart grid using image processing. So, the last talk I just gave was all about a report that Steffers found that was the Emerald Gate Foundation that was looking into bioenergy medicine and ultimately device-based bioenergy medicine linked to impact data. And so you can imagine that all of a sudden your outside-in robot smart environment becomes your therapist.
We were fascinated by the computational kind of biology dimension of silkworms.
So what happens when you had 17,000 of them communicating effectively?
That's a really great question. The templating strategies, and as you said correctly, there were geometrical templating, material templating, environmental templating, chemical templating if you're using pheromones to guide the movement of bees in the absence of a queen, where you have a robotic queen. Whenever you have these templating strategies, you have sort of control over nature, right? But the question is there a world in which we can move from templating, from providing these computational material and immaterial physical and molecular platforms that guide nature, almost like guiding a product, almost like a gardener, to a problem or an opportunity of emergence, where that biological organism assumes agency by virtue of accessing the robotic code and saying, now I own the code, I get to do what I want with this code. Let me show you what this pavilion may look like or this product may look like. And I think one of the exciting moments for us is when we realized that these robotic platforms that were designed initially as templates actually inspired, if I may, a kind of a collaboration and cooperation between silkworms that are not a swarm-based organism. They're not like the bees and the termites. They don't work together and they don't have, social orders amongst them, the queen and the drones, etc. They're all the same in a way, right? And here, what was so exciting for us is that these computational and fabrication technologies enable the silkworm to to kind of hop from the branch in ecology of worms to the branch in ecology of maybe human-like intelligence, where they could connect and communicate by virtue of feeling or rubbing against each other in an area that was hotter or colder. And they were, so the product that we got at the end, the variation of density of fiber and the distribution of the fiber and the transparency, the product at the end seems like it was produced by a swarm silk community. Mm-hmm. But of course it wasn't. It's a bunch of biological agents working together to assemble this thing. That's really, really fascinating to us. How can technology augment or enable a swarm-like behavior in creatures that have not been designed to work as swarms?
Green light with the mental illness.
Yeah, and the Vital Signs 6 thing is interesting because one of the trustees on the Dallas College works for Vital Signs 6, and he's on the news going, hey, you can do this app on your phone. The kids can tap in with their mental health data to Dallas ISD and Dallas College, and so we can be your one-stop shop. This guy, Phil Ritter.
Right. And your heart information, because I think heart entrainment is part of it. Like the aerobic, the heart, the wearables, the consciousness.
And the heart is absolutely tied in with your emotions and your mental state. I mean, they're not individual.
Oh yeah, here I have a little bit more.
Oh yeah, and then this guy, so the founder. There's two founders of Greenlight Credentials. One is Ross Perot's son-in-law. The other is this Manoj Kutty. So Manoj Kutty, I just saw where he went to India with the governor's delegation. The governor of Texas, Abbott, is trying to partner with India. And I think it has to do a lot with the
That's probably Dell, with the Dell folks, because they had the development impact bonds with Indian girls in STEM education and stuff. Like, I bet there's something on blockchain.
I'm sure the Dell people went too. I'll have to look at the list. But Kutty was one of them that went with the delegation to India for the governor. So he's trying to partner with Israel and India and these other nations.
Doesn't he know blockchain is supposed to stay in the United States, Lynn? Y'all patriots are not supposed to be exporting the good stuff to those other places.
We have to have these partnerships. I mean, we are a global hub. The Greenlight Credentials founder, though, so I think that they do this so that they can have. Well, I'm not even going to go into that, but Ross Perot's son-in-law is important. The other guy, Eric Reeves, because Ross Perot was the founder of Electronic Data Systems, which, I mean, he was also going across the state with Tom Luce of Texas 2036, and Tom.
But it was health and human service data, right? Perot systems,
health, Meadows mental health, and accessing student data for of the children, and they were going around the state decades ago talking about no pass, no play. Well, of course, nobody wants kids to be passed without having the academic foundation, and just so they can play sports. No question, that was a real issue, but it gave them credibility and access. And again, I think it's a ruse for access. And Ross Perot was also a major seed funder of Teach for America and Wendy Kopp, and her husband is the charter guy. Is it Kip or Kip Charters? So
there's the API, Future Religion as an API. John Ogden from the Mormon Transhumanist Conference. Ezekiel's Wheel, got some Ezekiel's Wheel going on up there.
You remember, and we made the distinction between.
Lincoln, we forgot. Look there. Lincoln Cannon, Lincoln, the decentralization of God. That was the topic of his talk.
He's still mad at me on because of what we were shining a light on this.
Well, we're just asking. I mean, did we decide? I mean, if Lincoln wants to do that for Lincoln, that's one thing. But if these tentacles start getting embedded in state level governments and things like that, the whole, especially with Miss Isom, we are wired to connect. Like, are we wired to connect with the decentralized God in a phone? Like, what does that mean? That's not how we want to do it. That's interesting. I forgot about these. I'll have to go back through these with some new eyes. Balancing emergent and hierarchical governance at church. I don't remember that talk. Jonathan Jardine. Church governance. Kubernetes. So, and this is just a picture outside of Oral Roberts, this Global Learning Center. It's like not very attractive.
Were you going to talk about OECD and Andreas Schleicher?
Oh, yeah. I gotta get. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll do that next.
The OECD. So there's a guy named Andreas Schleicher, and I come from the circles that I'm in. We don't want one world government. We don't want one world currency. We don't want one world religion. We're gosh darn individuals, and we want individual liberties and freedom and all of that. So I'm just gonna So seeing a man like this come to town, my friend Meg Beckich and I were like, okay, Andreas Schleicher with the OECD, which Alice Linehan has sounded the alarms on OECD for a long time, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And so he, I think this is interesting, his education that it's showing here, Rudy Steiner and Waldorf schools. And,
right.
The story, my father removed me from the state system. That's his story. Okay, great. But so Andre
when
Schleicher
did he come
comes
to town? Like, does he come to town often, or was there a particular
No,
time?
he came with the, this was a conference that the Commit Partnership kind of, and Todd Williams kind of infiltrated, but it wasn't his deal. So it was a thing at SMU, and it was I wrote about it a long time ago, but I attended, it was the Holdsworth, which is Charles Butt, the grocery store magnate. He's a gay billionaire.
Just think about how that's going to fit in, because that wasn't there a blockchain? Didn't he have Bitcoin dispensers in his grocery stores? I think that those grocery stores had a blockchain thing. So, and like we were figuring out early on, we would bump up against grocery store chains, like nationally, like an Idaho one, there was a Boston one. And besides the fact that like there's some money, but there's not a ton of money in grocery stores. I mean, maybe Whole Foods, but it's not the deepest pockets. Like, why did the grocery stores keep showing up? But if you understand that it's managing the microbiome, and then, like, again, when I was in Little Rock early on, and there was like a nicer neighborhood, and there was a Kroger, and I thought, well, I'm just going to treat myself and go in the nice suburban Kroger, and the carts were all broken, and there were there were cameras right as you went in, and gates. Like, and the gates were not so that you wouldn't steal the shopping carts. They were gates to control access at some point.
Oh yeah, and Whole Foods is doing that big time. Like, you can do your palm.
But this was like a physical gate to even get in, but it wasn't like the normal get a cart and just go through like the door. It was then another gate. And so you would have to probably show something on your phone or whatever to get through at some future point.
They're definitely doing that with Whole Foods. The grocery store that we have. But well, so the other thing is, I've written about Charles Butt and his, the story is he named the center Holdsworth, which is an interesting term. That's his mother's maiden name. She was a teacher. And so he's the good billionaire who's not trying to privatize. And so the unions and those on, the proponents of public schools think he's the good guy. And I'm like questioning it in my article because I'm thinking, is he really, or is he like Eli Broad? It kind of seems like he looks like he's against vouchers, but he's for all these other things that I'm not for, and the technology and the access of the children. But I'm much greener at this point when I'm writing this. This was years ago.
Hold on, I want up the map up now. So you were talking about Charles Butt, who's here in the map up here, and the HEB grocery stores.
Yeah, Henry Butt's. So that's, I think it's
and the
his
Holdsworth
dad.
Teaching Center, teacher training.
So he bought this land near Lake Travis, and it's massive campus. And they do a lot of training of the teachers. And but anyway, like the people doing the hit on us, they kept trying to tie us in with Raise Your Hand Texas and Charles Butt. I'm like, I've actually written about them and been skeptical about them. I'm not tied to them. I can't even get into that campus and see what it is. I mean, it could be just as simple as a tax break, or it could be something else. And
well, here he's working on a tech hub for his grocery stores and a cryptocurrency pilot and a digital initiative and delivery service. So to me, that looks like personalized microbiome management with your grocery store.
Well, and also I think, going back to that term Holdsworth and holds value, and children being tokenized, and children being an access point, and for him to be funding, like Raise Your Hand Texas is really just all about education technology, blended learning, and the bills that they've supported have all been about hybrid and blended learning, and but for them to try and pin me on Raise Your Hand Texas when I've been the one sounding the alarms on ed tech, but
because it's not consistent. I mean, they don't know you. I mean, I think they're just slapping stuff around.
They just want to paint me because he's a gay billionaire. They want to paint me as being tied to some leftist indoctrination, wanting to do the LGBTQ stuff on kids, or I don't know.
They can only talk in culture war talk. Like that's their language.
Talk, and I'm like, okay, enough. And so then with Andreas Schleicher coming to this Holdsworth summit that they had in Dallas, the guy is trying to push a global education system, and he goes to Singapore, and I go to Germany, and they're doing it this way, and then in Sweden they do it this way, and he's like the go-to guy on how they're doing it everywhere, and he'll say we need to be doing it like this, and then whenever he releases his next thing, we need to be doing this. It kind of keeps us all moving towards this one. It does feel like a one world education system, a collective mindset and a shift. And Holdsworth is big time tapping into mindsets and the emotions of teachers, because it is a really difficult job. And it's sort of like SEL for the teachers, the social emotional learning and self-care. And they go off to this beautiful retreat and they get energized and fed and emotionally, we hear
validated.
Validation and all that. And so it's been under the attack of those from the right for being, a driver in the culture wars. Well, fair enough, but there are people on the right that have supported Raise Your Hand Texas. So I'm like, what's the difference? But back to the human flourishing. So that's something that Evan Baer has been pushing from Learn Capital, who's the investor in Amplify.
We are independently rated, all green on Ed Reports for our science program, perfect score for our Desmos Rath curriculum.
Owned by Steve Jobs' widow, Lorene Powell Jobs, and amplifies the huge education technology, open education resources, OER bill, $2.44 billion that this bill is to shift money away from textbooks to technology using OER, which is free. I mean, we get free resources. Right. But the human flourishing is something that Evan Baer talks about. Human flourishing, we heard the Mormon Transhumanism Conference, even a girl that ran for the state board in Texas, she and her husband were both using that language, human flourishing. And then this guy that I was fighting on vouchers at the state Republican convention, he's big time into, his name is Scott Bowen, and he's head of he's one of the, he's on the school board in Clear Creek ISD. He's a big time Republican activist in the party, and then he's pushing vouchers big time, and he's funded by those who are pushing vouchers. And so he's talking about human flourishing. I'm going, what's this with flourish? What's with that word?
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it might even be like in Momo, in the story, they talk about your life, like these moments being like these big flowers that come up and then they sort of fade, and then there's another beautiful flower, and it's like the lotus flowers, and then the time bankers steal the flowers and roll them up and smoke the time. Like it's an interesting idea, but the idea of the lotus, like I think, is sort of part of this unfolding. And I had mentioned before in that OA television series, the evil doctor kept trying to drown and revive systematically these people who had near-death experiences to figure something out about that transition. And when he extracted flowers out of their ears, and so there were a group of them that he killed, and then they were floating in this pond with this pool with flowers growing out of their ears, and then the individual flower petal, he was trying to explain it, and he's like, you can eat a petal and you can go to another dimension.
So that's what I think of this.
Like the flower was your soul, and the soul was all of the layers of you. Again, not everyone believes in sort of reincarnation, but over time, say your soul holds information about other lifetimes or other information than besides what you normally experience, and it's represented as a flower. And he, in the show, he's eating a petal and jumping into another dimension. So he's time jumping. Now, again, it's a TV show, but there's usually some thread of something in these TV shows, which is why they're talking about them. So,
yeah. It preps us, it primes us so that we will be receiving this. But the flourishing that I heard about in the Mormon Transhumanism Conference was that we've tapped out. And even that Harari guy talks about, human 2.0, but we've maxed out on our abilities. Now we've got to elevate to the next level. We've got to level up.
Regenerate. Regenerate. It's all this stuff is regenerative these days. So, well, and I will say, so I mentioned like with the grocery store stuff, that the other thing that comes up to me that I remembered is in my descent map, I have John Mackey. And so you'd mentioned about the libertarian mindset. Well, John Mackey was the co-founder of the original Whole Foods in Austin, like before it became just the big franchise. And he was a resident of Austin and identified as a libertarian and wrote a book about conscious capitalism. So again, if you're thinking that choice and decision architecture is sort of embedded in a capitalist construct of exchanging tokens, like whether the tokens are money, that your money is your value or what you care about, or a language. Now we've got these Web3 tokens, which are an enhanced blockchain language. And so the capitalism could be a way of mapping consciousness, especially if the tokens go with the digital twins and they go into the, beyond place or whatever, and they bring stuff back with tokens.
I just thought of something that we call it, because when we go shop there, it's one of the better grocery stores, but we call it whole wallet, because it takes your whole wallet.
They want to take your whole wallet, right?
But and thinking about Whole Foods, whole language, whole child, like the intersection of that. But yeah, whole wallet for sure.
All of it. Well, and then
back to the butt thing, Charles Butt thing, is I remember you and I thinking about the children. It's like I kept saying, why is he so tapped into the kids? Why?
Because they're the rocket ship people. They're the imagination explorers.
Mm-hmm. But the lettuce heads on a supply chain model, and thinking about blockchain as being like it's us on that model. It's not the grocery products. And we've talked about how blockchain is a cool technology if you're tracking airline parts and blueberries and such. It is a cool technology, but we're talking about people, and that's where our whole life is on this ledger.
Yeah, but the
what's the fastest way to scale this is you got to tap into the kids too.
Yeah.
What's the biggest access, the easiest access point, and so if you can upload all the children through the largest school district
right. No, they're building space explorers. That's what the Houston School District is doing. They're building inner space explorers in the name of school choice and reform and standards and data. But the thing is, this is this article from Melanie Swan from 2016 called "The Future of Your Brain-Computer Interfaces: Blockchaining Your Way into a Cloud Mind." Mm-hmm. So it's talking about shared mind. And then there's a little bit of like, oh, maybe there's some things we should talk about. This is 2016, right? Bobby's like, we need to keep the blockchain in the country because it's going to be so wonderful. I'm like, you don't even know what it is. Like, well, Nicole probably does, like her druid.
Don't pretend like you don't know, right?
All about this.
Brain-computer interface, was that the DeVos, what DeVos was doing?
Well, DeVos was doing like biofeedback stuff, which is, again, part of the mesmerism and part of getting in the zone. I think part of this astral projection remote viewing will involve wearable tech. But here it's talking about collective applications like a cloud mind, multiple individual minds joined together to pursue a collaborative goal such as problem solving, idea generation, creative expression, or entertainment. And it does say that there might be some concerns around automation, coordination, whatever, credit assignment of the cloud mind collaboration.
Collective personhood. And that, the collectivism is always, for those on the right have been like, oh, we're, against collectivism. But when you're talking about all of this leading to this super organism, that sounds kind of wacky, like sci-fi, but when you think about our bodies and our brains in terms of the connection, and we know that the technology is moving to where wearables and things will tap into all of these parts of our brains and our psyche and our gut, and even just us being nodes.
Yeah,
I
think the nodes are actually stars. Think about that. Think about, like, I know you mentioned about the star thing with the church.
The Mormons and Kolob.
But to my again, and this is my thought experiment, but if there is something else where all of the information exists, like the many worlds, like all the outcomes, all the things, and we're just in a tiny subset living through what we can process through our biology, it's likely that those information fields will be light-based, like light computing, that like the move to photonics and optics, that information is based in light, and it probably will be organized like a crystal lattice. It seems like all of this stuff is crystalline in some way. So if you've got a light-based
variant, loose light,
yeah. I mean, but I would say like Tom Luce, that's interesting to think about that name too. But, and I think the Luciferian, I mean, the trick is like once you put that, the people who like have all the baggage with that, they jump onto that and they're like, I know that story, those are the bad guys. And I'm not saying it's good, I'm just saying if it is a lattice of information that has intersecting nodes to it, those nodes could be imagined as a star or a planet or a solar system. Like when you look at models of physics, astrophysics, it's math and simulation modeling. There's very limited things where they're actually, I mean, supposedly they're out there taking pictures of a few things, but mostly it's math and modeling, and it's always this grid area. So,
and the graphics used for these initiatives, oftentimes, and even I've mentioned this on LinkedIn, the default profile pic, or not profile, but the main picture on the backdrop of your LinkedIn profile was those nodes where it makes the line.
Right, it's nodes. And so maybe not exactly but like an aperiodic crystal or something like that. So you could imagine, like to me in my mind, is that space, is space information space. And if so, this idea of the star or the lone star state would be like, you could imagine a star being a point, a node in information space, you know, and then you've got all these lone stars out there. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, like Israel is, they call that that we're partnering with Israel because it's the lone star. The two Lone Star states, Texas and Israel alliance.
Oh, really?
And that's actually in that video that I found that they produced with the Texas Israel.
With
it has all those nodes, like things. It's this really interesting visual.
If you could find that again, maybe you can resend it to me. That was fascinating. I should probably just store that and put that up on my.
We could do a whole video just on that.
Yeah. We could.
We could hold a whole talk just on that video and breaking that down. Let's do that.
That way we should do that one. So this is just from the Cloud Mind. This is also talking about using as an initial foray to use permissioned brain cycles while you sleep. And this is also in the OA. Like they don't have it say it's on blockchain, but they have a group dreaming, and this is the unconscious. And I remember going back at one of those collective shift conferences where they had a guy from Sesame Workshop, and he was talking to Grover, and Grover was saying that he wanted to have naps, and the guy was like, I don't think you understand what an app is. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll just plug it into your brain while you sleep.
We are here today to talk about breakthrough learning in a digital age along the longest street in the world, Sesame Street. Grover, what are you doing here?
Oh, a talk! I love talks! Oh, perhaps I can help you. What is this talk about?
Well, it's about really teaching kids using digital technology.
I know a lot about new technology. I am on the cutting edge of new technology, and I can help teach the children of the world using my new technology. I think we could teach the children using iPhone apps.
Well, it's true, Grover. In fact, there are some apps that, everybody uses.
No, not apps. Everyone is doing the apps. No, I am talking about iPhone naps.
Naps, okay?
Yes.
You're gonna have to explain that one.
Well, it is easy. You can put lots of information on your iPhone, right?
Right.
Well, then you just have to take a nap with the iPhone next to your head, and all that information in the phone will import directly into your sleepy little noggin.
I don't think that's gonna work either, Grover.
Well,
no.
Not yet, but once I develop a USB port for the forehead, it will work like gangbusters.
Like they knew back then. That was like 2012 or something like that video. So
what about collective impact and the impact investing as part of the super organism?
Well, I mean, I feel like the impact is the way to keep measuring all the key performance indicators, which keeps you in the loop. But I do just want to mention, so this is Mackey, the conscious capitalism. He had a conference with this guy Gaffney, who was like a mystical rabbi guru in 2012. So they were already doing this sort of the libertarian overlapping with the human potential mind stuff back in 2012. And he was connected to the Center for Integral Wisdom. And then this guy, Michael Strong, was a collaborator on this. It says this is part of this, what do they call it? Is it University of Austin? So this is the new anti-woke, freedom university.
Very wise.
And this is, let's see, AFI is led by Executive Director Michael Strong. That's the Adolescent Flourishing Initiative. So they're not just after college kids, they're after high school kids. And it says he is one of the most experienced designers of innovative school programs and creating high-performance alternative schools. And then in his bio, it says that his work as an educational entrepreneur, does that sound familiar? A little Learn Capital, led to a partnership with John Mackey, the founder and CEO of Whole Foods. John and Michael co-founded a nonprofit that gave birth to well-known programs including Conscious Capitalism and Peace Through Commerce. So, if you fall into
solve the world's problems. I mean, see that you consistently hear that conscious capitalism can solve all the world's problems, and same with stakeholder capitalism and Ronnie Cohen. So Ronnie Cohen, talking about solving all the world's problems through this stakeholder capitalism, conscious capitalism, and like the invisible heart.
Yeah. Well, it's because I think it is about manifestation. Somehow it's about manifestation, some of this. And so this was at the University of Austin. For a while, they were using the old Parkland as a base. I don't know if they have their own campus now, but they were having certain events at old Parkland. And Joe Lonsdale of Palantir was a co-founder.
Yeah, and old Parkland.
Oh, here. So he was a co-founder of this university. Yeah, here it is. Joe Lonsdale, CEO of BBC, co-founder of Palantir. So Palantir was doing, when we're talking about impact investing, they were doing the deal verification of data for the mental health social impact bond in San Jose. So there were 5 pilot social impact bonds back, I don't even know how long ago it was, 2015. That was early childhood, early literacy. There was one other school one, and there was a homelessness one and a mental health one. And so the deal verification, the data analytics went through Palantir for the homelessness one and the mental health. So, and then this guy Lonsdale was bringing in, there was a forbidden course that was held at Old Parkland in 2023. And so Lonsdale brings in his buddy Mark Andreessen, like into Old Parkland. Will AI save the world? Mark Andreessen and Joan Lonsdale discuss, and again, these people, they're pretending like that they're somehow not in the program when they're totally in the program. They're just in the new game, and this new game is like being imprinted against the backdrop of Hercules, right? And the Ides of March, and all of the Athenian stuff it's right in the middle. It's like we're remaking Rome all over again, and people just don't even know that they're in a game. They're sitting there in a game, and they have no idea that they're in this game.
So weird.
It's so weird, and like not enough people can even understand because they're just stuck.
Meaning the art and the symbolism and the statues and all the things in Old Parkland. People miss that part.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
Let's see. I was looking because you were telling me this. Oh, okay. So this is this University of Austin, their high school program. This flourishing was at Learn Capital. The Learn Capital camp. Learn Capital in Austin. So I think you had been there and you're like, I think this is that. So this is
Yeah.
Exploring Learn Capital, Venture Capital in Austin with a Smile. So this was just a picture. The arena. An arena is like Roman arena.
Evan Baer is also really pushing school choice as well. He came and showed up at the legislature to tell the story of, some sob story. They always draw from something.
Well, this is their campus, and I think you had shared a picture, so you can see this Catholic church or something in the background, and then you can see on this image of students are at University of Austin that's exactly where they are. They're on this Learn Capital outdoor space. So yeah, it's all interconnected. I feel like it's really kind of silly that people imagine this University of Austin thing to be some sort of liberatory program. It's kind of sad. Oh, and I do want to mention one other thing about the blockchain stuff. Here we have Natalie, and you and I. We had
and barbecue.
Right, we had barbecue. We didn't have the wallet, the wallet to go to the whole event that year in Austin. And it's interesting because these blockchain events happen in Austin with some regularity, and Bobby was speaking at one, the consensus one this year. So for him to pretend that he thinks it's only just crypto, like money, is ridiculous. But yeah, so we talked to her over the barbecue dinner the night before, and we were trying to explain about impact investing and blockchaining children and welfare, and that it wasn't good. And I wonder how much, she must know. I wonder if she's just sitting there thinking oh, they know this, but they don't know that. Right?
No, she was really nice and engaging.
She was very friendly.
Completely baffled by us. Who are these women that...
I know.
There's these moms that come in and they're like, this is a problem. And then we're sitting by the people who do Bitcoin mining, and they were like, we've never thought about it. Blockchaining the children. We were just thinking it's like a second income. And we've been able to abandon our other jobs to do this full time. But Natalie, what freaked me out is when we saw the video months later of her, she sounded like a robot. It was the weirdest thing.
Oh,
remember that?
I don't remember that one. Maybe you can send me
Somebody,
a clip.
Yeah, I'll have to send to you. But it was really strange. But yeah, her work is
well, she was the chair for, I don't know if she still is, but for a time of the blockchain, the Texas Blockchain Council. So she was, running the show for a while behind the scenes. And then she came out of MIT, and that's where they had the block certifications. And then so they had the learning machine that then got changed around to Highland credentialing. And they didn't get the, Greenlight got the contract, not Highland, but they were working on these stamps, government stamps, and proof of things with government systems, these apostilles. But the thing that I wanted to point out was that her background was in phenomenology and psychology and psychiatry and social development. So it's very interesting to have someone be the chair of the Blockchain Council, but they're not a programmer. They're not an electrical engineer. They're not a finance person. They're a psychology person. They're someone, this hustlering phenomenology, her dissertation was called Structures of Intersubjectivity. The goal, developing an account of the structure of individual human subjectivity, drawing on hustlering, phenomenological, sociological, and depth psychological, which is Jungian, approaches. So tell me, when I'm using this lens of turning children into agents to go into interdimensional space that might be the collective unconscious and bring stuff back, and then having all of these experiences with the digital twin tracked on a blockchain ledger to create, an extension of yourself that is able to access these spaces, and then it's unique to you, right? Because I don't think the goal is homogenization. I think it's unique units that are then compiled by high-level mechanical computation into some pattern. They want people to be self-actualized. And I'm not saying that they want them to be self-actualized because I think that's great and they're going to be all happy and everything. They want them to be themselves so that they can be identified in the pattern. And so in that way, if you use that lens that the children are the closest to have the easiest access of getting in, to that field, more so than all the people that we try to talk to, the grown-ups in the room, and say, this is what's happening, and they're so rigid in their thinking, they can't break out of it. But the children can. The children are very flexible thinkers. That's who they want. So that makes sense that you would want to create impact finance and blockchain, maternal health care and babies for health outcomes and early childhood education and Head Start, and track the kids through college and career as human capital. It actually makes sense. I'm not agreeing with it. I have a lot of problems with it, but I think the fact that that is the focus of her dissertation has everything to do with qualia and this ontopoetic existence that I've been kind of looking into. So Schleicher was with the grocery store people, training the teachers, and it's global.
Talking about the global education, where we should be going, and he's kind of driving based on what he sees, the best practices across the globe. He's saying we need to be doing this, and the skills are a big part of it. But in Texas, the same people pushing open education resources and blockchain were the ones pushing the reskilling, upskilling in that language.
Yeah, because
and these are conservative legislators. And like, why are they driving this planned economy and this language that comes out of the World Economic Forum or UNESCO? Right. I thought we were Texas and we were independent. And we have a robust economy. Why wouldn't we have our own words? Same with OER. The Commissioner of Education says, oh, no, open just means it's free. I'm like, well, it's not free. It was $2.44 billion. But okay, if it's free to the districts, why don't we use our own term? Why did we use a UNESCO term? If this isn't part of the global education system and this military origin of that language, why wouldn't we just call it, Texas Education Resources or Texas Open Resources or whatever? No, we use their exact term. That's purposeful.
So this is back to the map where Bobby is talking about these folks don't know anything about blockchain. And I'm saying, well, Biden did do an executive order about digital assets and Web3. He's just not super excited about it. Now, I'm not a pro-Biden guy, but you can't say that he doesn't know, or his administration. He may personally not know, but it's
right, because he's not even really there based on what you see.
Yeah.
But his administration, I'd say the same thing about Trump's administration, that Trump doesn't know these things. He can't get into the weeds of these things, but the cabinet is waiting in the wings for either one to.
The presidents don't really run things. Hello,
and keep us distracted with these races. All of this comes in at the local level, as you've seen. They can drive the initiatives through executive order, but it comes in through the local level, and it can't come in through the local level if we stop it there. And the best way to just keep your kids out of the metaverse is to be that wrench in the gears. If they're not on a device or a sensor or something in the smart network accessing them, they can't really be.
Right.
That's a wedge that you can drive.
Definitely. Well, it sounds like you guys are being pretty effective and at least stymieing them to a certain extent, at least getting somebody to shell out some money to make up some bogus, assertions about you. But I do just want to revisit again. Biden was the senator from a tiny state from 1973 to 2009. Now, I would say honestly, if democracy is working, there's no reason that you should have senators in for that long. That's kind of ridiculous. But so he's commuting back and forth. He's very connected to Delaware. It's not a big place. And then he goes, and then he's in the White House, right? And during this time in the White House is when all the ed tech stuff is rolling out and all the future of work is rolling out and the blockchain stuff is ramping up. So Delaware itself is a center for finance, right? Many corporations are incorporated in Delaware because of the structure of how the laws are. So while he was in the White House, Jack Markell was the governor of Delaware. He chaired the National Governors Association. I didn't realize that. Okay. So Markell is very close with Biden, and Biden appointed him. That was his ambassadorship to the OECD, right? Okay. So Biden appointed him to the OECD between 2022 and 2023. Now, the OECD,
how does it differ from UNESCO? I don't know.
Okay. So it says the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, an intergovernmental organization with 38 countries, founded in 1961 to stimulate economic progress and world trade. It is a forum whose member countries describe themselves as committed to democracy and the market economy, providing a platform to compare policy experiences, seek answers to common problems, identify good practice, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it's a global group.
Okay, so look at it's the United Nations.
Yeah, so the countries are mostly European, Turkey, and the United States. So this is Markell. So Markell was a bundler for Biden. He raised a bunch of money for Biden. He's a close friend and an advisor. And so Biden, has him, gives him this ambassadorship to the OECD. So here is his OECD bio. And who knew that we would have an ambassador, right? But in addition, he came out of Comcast, so telecom, Nextel, Comcast, and is on the various nonprofits, including the Annie E. Casey Foundation, Jobs for America's Graduates, Henry Crown, and a Rodel Fellow at the Aspen Institute. And so the Rodells are quite interesting. He's all in. He's also connected to Skillful. So this is in 2020, so this is before he's an ambassador, but the OECD was working on blockchain. They had developed an expert policy group in 2020. So, this idea that somehow we're going to keep blockchain in the United States, and because of economic development, doesn't make any sense. It only works because it's globally connected, and it's globally connected through the OECD. And so among their policy advisory board, and it's quite long, but Sandy Pentland of MIT Media Lab is on there, and he's the main guy behind digital identity. And then they have a whole primer, and look, it's all of the
backdrop.
Cubes. It's all
the backdrop looks just like the Capital One backdrop and the Goals 2000, those stackables.
Okay, and imagine this is information, Lynn. I guess that's what I was trying to say about these nodes or whatever. The kids are navigating through this space, and then think about Minecraft and the squares. Why is Minecraft a bunch of squares? It's because I think it's prepping kids. A lot of the video games are squares. I don't think it's just because it's easier to make squares. I think that's a reason. And
the squares in a one dimension is a hexagon, and that's the badging, the digital currency, the crypto, all of it uses the symbol of the hexagonal badge, and the hexagons they make the full like the beehive.
Well, and the beehive, and then also the graphene, which I think is the electrical conductance in the one-dimensional grid. And in my current thought is that the goal of the graphene is actually to replace the cytoskeletal microtubules, like the carbon nanotubules, which are part of the quantum stuff. So I know. Here OECD is saying, what is the blockchain? A technology, a currency, the new internet? And so they have a whole primer walking people through. So maybe Bobby should get this book and he would understand it better. But it's way more than just money. And so Schleicher is part of this. The blockchain is credentialing. So here, is it connected to the skills? The OECD lifelong learning badges are the skills. This is Markell Foundation in Colorado and Skillful. And so this is the lifelong learning on the ledger part. And we've talked about that a good amount. I don't think we need to hit that beat that drum anymore. But Colorado is a huge part of this. Learning Economy, the guy Cromartie, he was with a Learning Economy Foundation before. And the main guy, the first time I was really seeing skills with Pavel Leksha, the transhumanist. And again, this is Global Education Futures with Tom Vander Ark and, the
Hi, Tom.
Capital. Hi, Tom. How's Pavel?
Tom.
Right. And it's interesting.
Later today.
Yeah, the whole Pavel Leksha stuff and the mining, that they were both coming out of mining. Because increasingly, I do feel like, what if this is a language? Is it a language of mineral consciousness, of like crystals? It feels like it might be. But there's Global Education Futures, and they're going to thrive with the skills of the future, and their skills atlases and their bioeconomy with blockchain and neural networks and everybody tokenized. And so this isn't new. I mean, it's been at least 10 years that they've been talking about it. And emotional intelligence, I mean, yeah, the conservatives are going to talk about it. They're just not going to say that it's
no. They say your social credit score, and I'm like, it's not a social credit score. That's not that they're not doing social credit scoring, say in China, elsewhere, but that's not what this is. But you can enter a conversation if they say that.
Although I have to say, Sean had a good point that I like when you're thinking about wordplay, because that's not always my strong space. But he said, if, when I was saying that of reducing people to numbers in a punch card, and that's almost like a player piano, like the cards in a player piano. And so what if you could imagine the social credit score as a musical score? And so what if, to me, I'm starting to think that navigating through these crystal spaces in vibration is like a music, like a frequency based and like an acoustic signature. And in that way, a score, if you were somehow represented as a musical score, as your soul as a musical score, as a vibrational frequency, to me, that actually kind of holds up with the way I've been thinking about it. So that kind of social credit musical score could work. And so thanks, Sean, for bringing that in. But most people are not thinking about it like that. So here's another navigation, the OEC Future of Education and Skills. Because remember, none of us are ever going to get out of school. We just have to collect skills till we die. And then maybe even once, maybe they're collecting skill badges from our human compost. Like maybe our compost will level up. That'll be the ultimate level up, is like after you're fully composted. It's terrible, but anyway. But it's a compass.
So a lot of people talk about the Agenda 2030. That's a big date for.
But look, it's well-being.
Future. So well-being 2030. The compass. Interesting that the competencies, so that's outcomes-based education, talks about the competencies that you have to achieve.
Yeah, so this is the background to the competency stuff. And again, but it's for well-being. Like Nicole is going to steer us to the well-being, so we should, and again, the compass to me is navigation. They want navigation happening. Now, of course, the Casey Foundation is all part of Strive, and Strive is Ballmer, and Ballmer is Commit and human capital.
Out of school time learning is interesting. The guy that I was watching him talk at the education agency about open education resources, I just looked up some videos of him, and he used to do, before he was hired for the agency, he's a Teach for America charter school guy, but he was doing a nonprofit where they would get devices to low-income children, and out of school learning was his big focus.
Yeah, well, because that's where the game is. The game is you interacting with the environment. And then sometimes it'll be a digital environment, and sometimes it will be a real environment. But here is Markel is on the board of the Casey Foundation. Again, this is UPS pretty much runs the board of the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and they were very Catholic. So there's a lot of overlap. And Annie E. Casey is based in Baltimore, which is where the first Catholic cathedral was. And there's Catholic Relief Services is there. So there's a lot of that. And
the word Catholic actually means universal, and they're big drivers in the lobbying for the universal school choice.
Oh, okay. And like at the surface, it might look like, we want money to go to Catholic schools.
Oh, we did mention lifelong learning, the book, Theodore Hesburgh and Wharton, but that really set up the lifelong learning and disrupting the higher ed in order to bring access to the lifelong learning model. You're always learning out in the community everywhere, not just in an institution of education.
But you owe it to the world to keep track of your data so that they can use it for the grand pattern.
Right, the patterns for lifelong learning. And Father Hesburgh, he advised how many presidents? A number of presidents while he was a Catholic priest.
Yeah, we talked about him in one of the
made a movie about him. Yeah. But the Patterns for Lifelong Learning book is really interesting when you see the visual, the graphic that they used of the cycle. It looks almost like a recycling.
Right. Let me see. I'll see if I can pull that up.
666. But he and Wharton wrote that book in 1974.
Oh, whoops.
I have a copy of it. I need to go back and read it.
Well, it looks dynamic, right? And then you've got the trichotomy. And again, you could sort of limit it and just be like, oh, it's 666. That's evil, and just sort of leave it at that. But there's more going on. And I think there is something about a cyclical, like the cycle of it that is
yeah.
I mean, I'm inclined to, I mean, I know it doesn't fit the standard Christian frame, but like that there is, we do this more than once, and that there's something that's keeping track of everything, and that it's like emergence. Like, you have your time, you learn the lessons, you do whatever, and to me, that spinning around thing feels like part of it. Like they're gathering all the data, it's like a vortex, and then it goes somewhere. I'm getting close.
And the Rockefeller, you found the Rockefeller and Hesburgh and Wharton, they were all
right. Oh, in the Rockefeller Foundation report. Yeah. They were all on the Rockefeller. Mm-hmm. I'll have to go back and, well, that's part of my Winthrop Rockefeller discussion. I have to do that one next. But like the data integration, like, because the schools, and this is part of the community schools. And again, on the one hand, they'll be like, oh, you're aligned with the unions and these, trying to take advantage, get the government to do all big government in the schools and do all these social welfare services. But I mean, as a progressive, I'm not against people having, like, getting things that they need or having, I don't want kids to go hungry or all of this stuff, but having it under the umbrella of the school and the government is going to create the space for this blockchain twin integrated data system. So Annie Casey is definitely behind Kids Count and getting all of the data, and the community schools model start to, in the name of using, like, connecting families with welfare services or social safety net things, then they get all the family data too. So then they pull all of it in, whether it's your housing insecurity or your food issues or your mental health issues or your employment issues, like all of it gets hoovered into the things for impact investing at one end, but also part of the larger patterning in the other.
Well, and when you move the kids to out of seat time learning, the schools have to be used for something. So the ones that are not auctioned off and sold are used as the community schools where you get your devices, your mental health services, your food, your feminine products. All those things come from the hub of the community of the schools. That's the future. And the National Governors Association you mentioned earlier with Markell is that they were big drivers in the community schools model with that lady Shirley McCune back in 1989, MCCUNE, but she was talking about shifting that with reform we need to go in this direction, and she really was driving us towards that model, which is interesting. I tell people, I'm like, the schools aren't going to be for learning.
Yeah, no, they're not. They're going to be hubs. They're going to be hubs.
Hubs.
Yeah.
Distribution hubs.
And this civic data integration, blockchain is the key piece of that. And so the data integration is going to be, it just goes over to Newton and this idea of, like, we can tell that you do math better when you eat waffles on Wednesday. That they'll have all this micro data, and then they'll just be making determinations about you based on this metadata. And it, again, it's all because they break things on purpose, and then they get investors to fix it. And then again, that's where the conservatives come in, or, people who are the investors. Oh, we'll have the market take care of it. We'll break all this stuff. So the government provides access to you and your kids and gives everybody a number. And then they're like, well, yeah, it's really broken. Can you fix it? Wait, can fix it? Just we need some data.
I tell them, like, they broke it on purpose. So your response is what they want from you, to then say, it's broken, take this and use this tool and take this voucher. We're saying, no, it was broken on purpose in order to remake it and give you some counterfeit solution. It doesn't solve anything. It just keeps you in the constant cycle, continuous improvement.
Right. And this is the
Eve.
Some more after school stuff. I think this is in Baltimore and Harbor. So we've got harbors and lighthouses, very watery, very consciousness stuff. These 21st century community learning centers, which is going to be the model, the drop-in center. And so for that, they have maker programs for high school kids, 3D design, game development, circuits and electronics, blogging, personal branding, Minecraft, and graphic design. Yeah, that's education. It's so gross. It just makes me angry. And,
Marath was big time tied into the guy with out of seat time learning and the MacArthur deal and
LRNG. the collective shift.
LRNG, and Byron Sanders and his.
And then they have these different partnerships where you can earn badges through their online curriculum. Well, and that's going to be homeschool, guys. Hello. And here they're supporting social emotional learning with evidence-based programs. And so all of this wellness that Nicole is talking about is, in anxiety and addiction that Bobby's talking about is going to all be linked into evidence-based everything and the biofield tuning. So, hello. And so I did skills. Oh, the stackable credentials. Blockchain. This guy, Andrew Young and Stefan Verholtz.
You look at the backdrop of that right there. It's the same stackable hexagonal.
It's going through the grid. I think somehow it's navigating this information grid. And
the grid's a big focus in Texas as well. And I told them we could solve the grid problems if you just take the money spent on ed tech.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, that would be great. I love you, Lynn. I love how you get out. Exactly.
I told Senator Bob Hall, he's a big driver in the grid conversations and preventing any attack on the grid. And I'm like, hey, I found your money for your grid work. Ed tech. Hey, we got the money.
I love that.
He kind of laughed. He's like, looks at me like, what is she about to say? He's actually the only one who voted no. He was the only conservative to vote no on the open education resources. But then once they started talking about the Bible, he's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Now I'm all in. I'm like, oh.
Can you say about the voucher stuff, about the accountability? Like, we need strings attached. Like, what story they pulled out to get everybody to agree to that?
Oh, yeah. And they said the abortion. So they were like, we have to have strings. We have to take the no strings language out of the party. Because now we need strings because somebody had an abortion with the voucher in another state. And I'm like, oh gosh.
Right.
It never ends.
Right. Exactly. Well, and then when they were on debit cards in Arizona, when the ESAs were on debit cards, they were like, some mother bought school supplies, but then she returned them to Target and bought different things. So we need, and so I think they just set up these stories so they can come back and say, what's the answer? What's the answer? Blockchain. It's
right. New problem, reaction, solution. Yeah. Right. Oh my gosh, we can't have them funding abortions with the school vouchers. We'll
blockchain the children. That's the answer.
Yeah. Let's blockchain them because it's way easier to track.
Yeah, exactly. And just like on the skill stuff. So Burgum keeps being floated as a Trump VP potential nominee, and people are like, I don't get that. Like, North Dakota doesn't offer a whole lot in terms of voting. But, Burgum came out of Microsoft in accounting software. Hold the value, holds worth. Does it hold its worth? And this is my blog post from 2018 about Burgum in North Dakota and competency-based education.
Wow.
And this kind of I laugh. This is Marion the librarian from The Music Man, and I put words in their mouth, and Marion is being like sweet talked by the shyster Music Man, and I put, I won't let you turn my library into a makerspace. And then the shyster replies, but how can we keep kids on workforce pathways if we let them read real books? I'm not succinct, but it was pretty good. And so Burgum is all about the competency-based education stuff. I mean, he's behind all of that. Get rid of bricks and mortar schools. And he's also a founding member of Skillful along with Markle. And he was the board chair of Atlassian. I didn't realize that.
See, and when, so Brooke Rollins, who used to be with the Texas Public Policy Foundation for 15 years, went to work for Trump in the White House doing innovation. And there's this video of Brooke Rollins and Ivanka Trump talking about skills and in the workforce and all of that. And now Brooke is leading. She's waiting in the wings for, if Trump is elected, she's going to be driving his cabinet and the executive orders and all the things. So like, people need to understand that whether it's Biden or Trump or RFK Jr., all of these supposed, options. I mean, I always say they're selected, not elected, but right. Okay. So they keep us all embroiled in this debate and the theater and watching, well, he said this and they said this, but every single candidate has a connection to this stuff, and it's not just like a spider web and a murder board where we're trying to make a connection to something that doesn't exist. No, it's basically just to point out that this is happening regardless of who gets in the office. This machine is moving forward, and so again, it goes back to the local engagement that we have with people, the local conversation.
Right. And you're so good at that.
Our own little area can make a difference in this conversation, and removing their children from any participation in this, because we do have that agency. We do have the freedom and choice to do that.
Yeah. For now we do. It is not done. It is not done. And I feel like in some ways this is our task, like in terms of our choice and our free will, is when you see something, do you say something? Do you intervene? Do you educate? Do you insist on the conversation? Do you insist on accountability? Because I think that's sort of our big quest in all of this. And I'm just looking on the Pegasus map for this ACE Council on Education and Blockchain, and like the learning economy people. Connected impact, the blockchain workforce.
That was it. That was the thing that was scaled. This is it. So this is the document that ties in Dallas College workforce blockchain, and then it goes into the Greenlight credentials arrangement, which was a no bid deal. That was a deal done in the dark, and they got a massive contract. They have a huge conflict of interest with Phil Ritter working for the mental health piece of Greenlight, and not divulging that through the open meetings. So these are the things, these are the tools that we have at the local level that you can put a wrench in the gears.
Right. I mean, look at this imaging. So it's a young Black woman, when her hair is back and she has glasses on. She's in sort of a business suit, white button down, very put together, and she's at a keyboard, and there's all this overlay of data onto her. Now, it's interesting, at her temple, so it's sort of mirrored, like she's behind. It's unclear like where all this data is coming from. It's sort of overlaid. I'm sure it's just graphic design. They've overlaid it, but the way the data is shown on her, it's like on her temple, almost like an augmented cognition thing.
What did you think about that final story?
That was awesome, especially when we got to practice on our own.
Think about that word. So I thought about this actually just sitting in church yesterday, and then listening to a sermon on the body being a temple, but your temples and how oftentimes these things connect to the temples.
And this looks like a key. I mean, these look like a key. Like it's like a key to her brain, like several keys. Like these are repeated, this image of a key. And then the frequency, and it's sort of by her neck. And then this information over here, all of these dots, looks like a solar system. Doesn't that look like a representation of some sort of swirling swarm galaxy, right? And then you've got all of these circles repeated of like a figure in a dial. In a dial, which is kind of weird because that's the same kind of dial like Raul used like on the podcast that Leo and I did, which I thought was really weird, like with the magenta. But it's like a person in these dials, and
it looks like the EMF field too. Like if you look at that diagram of the human body and how the 8 to 10 feet out, they'll have the radius.
Right.
Yeah,
but could you sort of imagine this as a space traveler? Like she's using data to like navigate space in a way, like with the galaxy, and then you've got the twins, and this is almost like a light coming through, like a projection, like to projecting the twin into the galaxy.
Well, that's why the when they're with SpaceX and Elon Musk doing the partnership with that ISD out in the Panhandle, Ector County, the kids are actually log on to the devices because through the satellite, that hovers over their houses. NASA, there's a lot of conspiracy theories on, did we ever land on the moon? That was done in a movie set and blah, blah, blah. I think those things distract us from understanding I'm not saying that, maybe like you said about the flat earther, I'm not saying the earth is flat or round, or that it's not round, or that it's that those conversations keep us from talking about what all of this, because this is really intricate, very complex information. But if you just stick in these silly camps that are talking about, I don't know. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is NASA.
The thing is
whether
like,
NASA,
I feel
whether
like
we landed on the moon or not, NASA is not all that it says it is. We see more of what they're doing with time and space, and with satellites, and what's happening out in space with all of this information and the children. So.
Well, like Badger with Concentric Sky in Eugene, Oregon, the company that was doing the digital badging, one of their big partners was NASA. It doesn't really make sense. It's like an outsize, like if NASA should be busy building spaceships or whatever, they shouldn't be doing digital badging. Like there's a lot of stuff that NASA's got its fingers into, and I think in places that is like well beyond whatever its limited, like you should have your plate full with the stuff you're supposed to be doing. You don't need to be
why are you dabbling into
doing,
this stuff?
Buckminster Fuller light domes over here.
Concentric Sky is a high-end web and mobile company with a focus on emerging technologies in education. We were inspired by Burning Man, which is an event in the Nevada desert held annually. We wanted to do something that would give back to contribute to the experience of everyone there. Light at Play is a company that we formed after the fact, just to kind of give strength to our future projects and other initiatives that we have in the future. But the project was really about the art.
With the Radiance Dome, I was really amazed how when other people interacted with it, both at Country Fair in 2013 and at Burning Man, especially children would come up to the piece and start playing with the interactivity. And the inspiration that I could see in them and their comments and just how enthralled they were and how they could express their own creativity through the piece really led me to see that one of the greatest joys in creativity is making something that inspires additional creativity, both in myself and in others.
Each of those is thought of as a pixel in a fluid simulation, and we use various types of inputs to control the colors in response to different types of input, audio, so just ambient sound, as well as things like dancing, so we've connected it to a Kinect so that you can actually control it by dancing and other types of movements. We're really pretty unlimited on the input side. Collaborative partnerships between businesses and arts groups are essential. Well, I would suggest to look at it as something more than just a potential marketing opportunity. It's an ability to benefit the entire community by sparking creativity in other individuals that are not necessarily directly related to you.
But, and I will point out in terms of just this, I don't know if, maybe you pronounce it entelechy, the idea of a pattern of something being inside. And I've talked about this in another video, but I keep coming across these acorns and oaks. And I was at that garden that had the sculpture with the squirrel, and the oaks had keyholes in them. And so it's this idea of unlocking potential, that the acorn holds the blueprint for a giant oak tree. And it goes back to, again, classical antiquity, this idea of entelechy. And it's often connected to oaks and trees. And so Sean pointed out to me, because I don't think I'd noticed before, that is actually the symbol of the U.S. Department of Education, is an oak tree with an acorn at its base.
Wow.
It's interesting. I can't make it any bigger, but it's got rays coming out of it from like this root ball sticking out.
Well, it actually looks like the open book, the way that those lines are there.
It does look like the book, like a codex.
Because that's what the Department of Education, if you look at their logo, it opens like a book and it actually makes a cube, like a block.
Oh. I can see that as a book. Well, see, the thing is, then it's the code, right? And Nicole is always making such a big deal about being with Stanford Codex, the codex, the book. And this overlaps with biophysics and DNA, but I think limiting it to DNA is what they want. I think it's way more than DNA. But, proteins and coding and unfolding that seed of the acorn into the oak through the codex. And I think that the plan is that the codex becomes like, I don't know if it actually would be the codex or facilitate the codex, would be the smart contracts, which would be the blueprint to guide the noetic superorganism into existence. So when Michael Levin is talking about like the planaria, the flatworms have these blueprints, electrical blueprints, and they can encode them to hold more than one at once, like a two-headed planaria inside a one-headed planaria. And if you injure it, it grows back two-headed. They can encode an electrical blueprint and then enact it on the worm.
If you cut them in half, the bottom end grows a tail, the top end grows a head. But these cells that you just separated were next door neighbors before you cut them. How come they have completely different anatomical fates? That question cannot be answered locally. You can't tell from where you are what you should build. You have to communicate with the rest of the body and figure out what's missing. So this is non-local decision making. So we asked this question: when you amputate this planarian, how do you know how many heads you're supposed to have? And it turns out that there's an electrical gradient that we characterize that tells you how many heads you're supposed to have. And and what you can do is you cut off the head and the tail, and this middle fragment will regrow a nice, perfect worm 100% of the time. But because we understood this gradient, we were actually able to make these two-headed worms by taking this electrical. So here it says one head. But now we can say, no, actually you should have two heads. And sure enough, this isn't Photoshop. These are real animals. They make nice two-headed forms. Now, here's the really important part. This bioelectric map is not a map of this two-headed creature. This bioelectric map is a map of this one-headed creature. So what we did was we rewrote the stable bioelectrical pattern memory in this one-headed animal, and it stays one-headed with a normal gene expression. So here, anterior genes only in the head, not in the tail. And it sits there perfectly happy like this until it's injured. So a single planarian body is able to store at least two different representations, two different ideas of what a correct planarian looks like, and sit there, and it's a latent memory. It doesn't do anything until you injure the animal. The same body, the same one-headed body, can store two different representations. So at the very beginning, I told you that this collective intelligence works towards, it's a homeostatic loop that works towards a specific set point. And the question was, how do you store a set point for anatomy? This is it. You are literally looking at an example of how of how pattern memories are stored. They're stored as a stable bioelectrical state in tissue. And it's this in particular is kind of cool. It's a counterfactual memory because this is not a representation of what's happening now. It's a representation of what you're going to do in the future if you get injured. This is memory. It's long-term stable. It's rewritable. It has conditional recall, as I just showed you, or latency, and it has discrete behaviors. So what we're doing is we're reading and writing patterns into the collective intelligence of these cells that must navigate anatomical space. And so now what that means is that we can really do the kind of computational work of fleshing out the connections between the electrical state space of the circuit that we understand with all kinds of ideas from connectionist computational neuroscience to understand how electrical networks can store patterns, do pattern completion, and navigate spaces intelligently.
And so I feel like us as a society, we're being networked, and then through the smart contract layer, and everybody's going to get their personalized story to get them to agree to go into the protocol layer, that is the thing that's guiding the entelechy as a super organism consciousness. It's noosphere. I know, it's crazy. But I think Alice Walton and Deepak Chopra are all involved in this too. And I didn't, she's outside of, I know, she's outside
I just thought of
forward.
the NASA thing. So this was just, this wasn't that long ago, maybe, I don't know, a month ago. Yeah, no, it was only a few weeks ago, June 13th. But NASA came out with these guys that, there's a guy named Alex Galvani, Galvag.
Oh, that's an interesting name.
So CEO of Age of Learning. He came from NASA and he told Fox News Digital that recent advances in artificial intelligence make it possible to provide individualized educational experiences for millions of children. So it's interesting that the guy comes from NASA and then he's all involved in personalized learning and AI and ed tech. And now he's gone from NASA to Age of Learning as the CEO. Yeah, my friend said NASA, she's got this meme that says NASA, not a space agency.
That's pretty good.
What it stands for. I'm like, well, what is it? What is this?
Why is this?
Yeah, Houston. And
so just by way of sort of wrapping this up, I do want to just mention, I had some clips, but I'm not going to play them, but of Michael Crow when he's talking about the kids being a different species and Homo sapiens sapien.net, and that he and Bill Gates are getting together to make a 1 billion person online university. And so, and this idea of having a game-based education program that you just keep playing a game until you've done all the things and then you can get the diploma. And so this to me fits in with this idea of the splinterlands, this crypto play to earn. And, that's where I was bumping up against Derek Bros about that. But, this guy who was connected to the UN and, solving poverty through crypto play to earn gaming. And to me, this is starting to feel like the gaming protocol layer, maybe almost like a Skinner box, in that pigeon guided missiles. And Emily Talmadge wrote about that in her blog about Saving Main School a while ago, but that B.F. Skinner was using behaviorism to train pigeons to do guided missile navigation. And so I could see within, and the tokenized behaviors were initially piloted in preschools, prisons, and mental health institutions.
Yeah.
And that's in this book. So if you can use tokens to get people to guide their behaviors or structure them, scaffold them, not conform them in one specific way, but to guide them. These crypto play to earn games could be the equivalency of training the pigeons to deploy bombs. And we don't know what's happening on the other side of the game. You're engaging with tokens, but you don't really know what's actually going on the other side. And so Web3 game mechanics is being a central part of educational gaming motivation. And this is such a creepy picture too.
So sad. I just, it's not even a real kid, but
it's messed up. But this is Edu Labs from 2023, Gamifying Learning with Web3, How Blockchain and Tokens Are Changing Educational Games. And, and then there's another thing about incentivized learning models. And so now it starts to make sense, the Class Dojo, right? The Classcraft with Google, the tokenized social emotional learning programs, is that they are trying to build these cloud mines. This is Token Mines from 2024. This web.
Well, look at the dojo. That's the dojo.
Yeah.
Logo is the hexagon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an old one. That's from 2017. So you get these digital doggy biscuits and the gamification of learning, which that stimuli that we had talked about with the Metaverse campus, and it's a school within a video game. And so gamification is a big push from the global Silicon Valley.
Taylor Sheed is the founder of Stimuli, the creators behind this new virtual world students will be attending school in.
It's a video game. It's a school in a video game.
Then select Login with Google, and here enter your student email address.
When your child first logs in, they will select a custom avatar. Over time, they will learn and collaborate in an open sandbox world with their friends.
Stimuli is a connected schoolhouse for a connected world and easy access to your teacher.
Right here in Dallas ISD.
Hi, Michael Mill.
But that's business, right? Like essentially what Bobby's saying is I want to keep blockchain and AI in America to grow our economy. What he's saying is the logic dictates, unless he says otherwise, that he's a backer of global Silicon Valley.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's from California. Like, he can't not know. I mean, it's irresponsible for him. Here he's a speaker at Consensus in May 29th through 31st of 2024 in Austin. He was the headlining speaker. Here's the other speakers include Chris Dixon, founder and managing partner of A16Z Crypto, which is Mark Andreessen. Kathy Wood, CEO ARK Invest. Lynn Martin, the president of the New York Stock Exchange. Sergey Nazarov, co-founder of Chainlink. Jenny Johnson, Franklin Templeton, that's John Templeton. Here we go, Republican Tom Emmer, Minnesota, U.S. House of Representatives. Then we got the Democrat, Wyden from Oregon, right? It is here, you know? I mean, it's all Neil Stevenson. Hey there, Neil. Like, good to see you. If he had actually gone to Texas and said, and who?
Adidas at the bottom. Adidas Sports,
Oh, yeah. So because, what Sarah Walker said was fashion is a language. Digital fashion is going to be a language.
You tweeted, if one wants to understand how truly combinatorially and compositionally complex our universe is, they only need step into the world of fashion.
It's like I do assembly theory every morning when I walk in my closet because I really like a very large combinatorial diverse palette, but I never know what I'm going to build in the morning. I think it's an interesting feature of our species that we get to express ourselves through what we wear. I guess I want to just explain a little bit about my motivation in this space because it's really an intellectual thing for me. And obviously that's influenced by the society I live and like what's aesthetically pleasing things. But it's interesting to be able to turn that around and not have it necessarily be about the aesthetics, but about the power dynamics that the aesthetics create. Too few people think about the way that the aesthetics they build for themselves in the morning and how they carry it in the world and the way that other people interact with that because they put clothes on and they don't think about clothes as carrying function.
Oh yeah, like when I did I helped with that blockchain. I did a couple of interviews through the chamber, and they had these women that were doing the crypto. I was like fashion, basically.
Oh,
the NFTs.
But soon they'll be soul bound, right? I mean, we have folks from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. We have people from the Commodity Futures Trading, which is going to be linked to the kids on blockchain. We have people from the Office of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence from the U.S. Department of the Treasury. So, and then we've got Ernest Klein of the author of Ready Player One. Ha ha ha. Like, it's not like, and look, he's the number one. He's the first listed person. Is this not kind of clear what's happening? Now, if Robert F. Kennedy had gone to Texas and said, hey, I'm so excited about Texas being a lead in the global economy of blockchain and getting all those kids on the green light so that they can develop their skills in the world to go into the metaverse work world of, astral projection. Like, I might have some respect if he actually said it out loud, is actually happening. But
no, he's steering us and even like using, so, my friend who I've gotten to know through all the vaccine stuff. This was years ago. He's written the books on the bioweapon and all. He's been advising RFK on the medical freedom stuff.
Oh,
the proper language and I'm like, no.
Well, so the interesting thing about Markell. So just getting back to him. So we have he was a fellow with the Rodale Institute. Now, this is not Rodale, the organic farming, which I would have thought was interesting, but it's not Rodale, it's Rodale. And it's interesting because that name comes from Rollers and Delaware, and they started out in the printing business, but then they developed chemicals for semiconductor printing. So, and then they ended up doing work in nuclear power and clean energy. So there we've got the radiation hormesis stuff going on. So these Rodale folks, Don, Bill, and Susan Budinger formed Rodale, originally the Rodale Foundation, in 1999 when they sold their company to DuPont, which is, again, in the mix of all of this stuff. So their company is now in DuPont, and they're deeply big donors to Arizona State University, which is Michael Crow, which is ASU GSV. And so here's Bill on the board of the Rodale Institute, Aspen Institute, which is all impact vesting, Third Way, Breakthrough Institute, which I think is Breakthrough Energy, Democracy, and Brookings. And then his brother is on the board of the Arizona State University, the YMCA, Save Democracy, and Basis Charter Schools. So they're doing nuclear and school choice. And then check out this logo. So it's a flourishing flower with a hexagon for a bee head.
Interesting.
Flourish. Does that say flourish? A great education changes everything. Public education is a complex, interconnected system. Yes, it is a complex system.
Bloom, they're pollinating.
They're pollinating, right. And so Markel was aligned with these folks. They were kind of running essentially, and oh gosh, I'm trying to remember his name. Was it Kevin? Exceptional Delaware. He was talking about Markel bringing in competency-based education, because the competency-based is the badges, is the blockchain. It's all connected. So he talks about the National Governors Association and Markel being part of that. But Markel also had a blockchain initiative in 2017, which is, I guess it didn't really go anywhere, but because they're the center of incorporation for so many companies, it was about enabling legislation to do corporate record keeping on the ledger, which isn't very sexy, but it's actually sort of one of these foundational things that has to work. If you understand, like, states as a superorganism, companies as superorganisms. So Markel, I mean, there's no way Biden didn't know about this. Like, I mean, it's his state. It's not like, Delaware becomes the first state authorized corporate blockchain company, and Biden has just done, in 2017 he didn't know about it. And then Markel was also working with the Medical Society of Delaware to do the digital healthcare records. And so, and the company that was behind that was this, it's interesting, Haven Health and the Medical Society of Delaware, which goes back to like the 18th century. Pioneerism, the Delaware way, blockchain first in business collaboration, innovation, and substantive results in blockchain health. And so this is this guy, Vince Albanese, with Haven Health, that's part of the blockchaining Delaware health records. And what was really interesting was that and direct trust was part of it. I guess I didn't include this, but here it is. So they're doing telehealth. So this is the whole health freedom movement. All of these frontline doctors, all of this sign up for our concierge health service, all of this wellness company, it's all based on telemedicine, right? It's all remote consultation, which is going to be on blockchain. And it's going to be, because they're going to want alternative therapeutic data, because all the VAERS is going to be on blockchain to show that it works. So this guy, Haven Health, which was doing the blockchain medical records, their example talked about Delaware being a lead in this. Small states paved the way. We're reducing friction with the Delaware Medical Society of Delaware. So Delaware was the lead, and they're talking about being mindful of reminding patients and sort of growing this market so it's not just medical records, but it's patient reminders. And there's a whole report on how can we remind a patient that they need to take their AIDS medication. Which isn't that interesting, because we don't really talk about that so much anymore. the HIV stuff other than with Carrie Mullis, but this is not an old report. So they're bringing back the healthcare compliance information. And again, that's what Nicole wants to push is AI healthcare and blockchain healthcare. So
on our,
is it so that we can be dosed with our radiation? Is that what it's about? So, anyway, I guess I'm mostly done. I do want to mention the whole Stanford being a center for impact finance and like using MRIs in children's brains. I didn't understand what this was, Melina Unkefer, back in the day in 2018, why PBS was doing whole specials that education needed to be based on neuroscience and we needed to put a bunch of kids in MRIs and track their brain. But this is going to be for this out-of-body travel, I think. And Unkefer is behind that with the gaming. She was part of a lot of gaming work. And so she had a lab connected to Stanford. And,
Stanford Innovation Lab, I know that with the guy from Hoover Institute, Eric Hanyashek. So there's a woman in Texas who works right now she's working as an appointed staff member of the district that was just taken over in Houston, but she came from TEA and she was the one at the legislature pushing the open education resources, but she came from Stanford Innovation. But it was interesting. She Teach for America, Stanford, and then now is the open education resources, pusher for Amplify and high quality instructional materials. But then the guy who was appointed to take over Houston he appointed her on his cabinet.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So again, Houston, right? NASA, space travel. And the interesting thing about Hoover is, he was raised Quaker, I think by his uncle in Oregon. And he, again, mining. We've gotten back to mining again. So he's a mining guy. And then he facilitated this food transfer to Belgium in World War I and saved a bunch of Belgians, so they loved him. And then evidently this seemed to link back later to Congo and radioactive uranium transfers from the Belgian Congo. But after World War I and all the decimation, he went in and scooped up all these books for his library, the Tower in Stanford. Mm-hmm. And so imagine how many bombed out libraries there were in Europe. And then all of a sudden all these books get scooped up and were they all chemical books? I mean, what was that? What kind of books were they? I mean, what kind of books are up in that Stanford Tower anyway? And Stanford Law, which is where, Nicole had her Codex fellowship with. Paul Brest was the leader in social impact legal systems, setting all of that up. And of course...
Oh, that's the other thing is that she's a social impact architect. The Kristen Hull, the Teach for America of Stanford.
What is her name?
Kristen Dobson Hole, Hole. And she really did poorly at the legislature because they brought her up there and she admitted that they had rebranded it because they got busted.
She was a manager for Deloitte Consulting for social impact.
Yeah, Deloitte Social Impact, in between. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Bellwether Education, Supply Chain Analytics.
Teach for America, I believe, is in there. A lot of times they take it off their resume because it's a negative, but the teacher goes from a teacher to being a Deloitte social impact manager.
Yeah.
Community New Start.
World Vision.
So they have to do the teaching in order to lend credibility.
See, World Vision, this is the prayer stuff. Yeah,
she was crying in the hallway because we just ate her lunch. She wasn't prepared.
Whoa.
And they weren't ready for Meg and the moms to say, no. and I'm not laughing because she was crying, but the point is Meg was telling her, you don't want this for your children. Why are you doing this?
Right.
I know you're being paid. I get it. A man's got to eat, but why are you imposing this? And Meg told her, pull your kids out. Don't let your children be a part of it.
So this is where this goes. So, all right, Robert Pierce. I'm trying to remember who Robert Pierce was. So this is a World Vision. So, we were talking about Billy Graham before, and the fact that Billy Graham became really big with the support of William Randolph Hearst.
Wow.
in this Los Angeles crusade in 1949. So he had Hearst's backing. And then again, Hearst's mother was Phoebe Hearst, who was one of the most prominent members of the Baha'i, and she promoted kindergarten and the Parent-Teacher Association, right? And so you've got Phoebe Hearst, you've got William Randolph Hearst in the newspapers. Actually...
And Patty was
did Berggruen buy that? Berggruen bought the Hearst estate in Beverly Hills, and it was where JFK and Jackie stayed in their honeymoon, and the scene of The Godfather. So there might be a lot going on there, but anyway, so Billy Graham has this Randolph Hearst connection, right? And let's see, he was the son-in-law of L. Nelson Bell, who was a missionary, and he was a Bircher. So his father-in-law was a Bircher, and then of course the Birchers also include who are your oil people, the Bunker Hunt.
So I have to bring this up because I was just looking at this right before we went on.
Okay.
Is Rocky Malloy is a missionary, and he's the CEO of the National Chaplains Association. And they just got a huge win through the Texas legislature to bring in chaplains in the schools. So instead of the SEL, they're going to bring in chaplains, and they can actually get paid by the district. So Rocky Malloy was a missionary, and he tells all these crazy stories about how he's kind of has a bit of a God complex. But the missionary work is interesting in the intersection with the schools now.
Well, so the other thing is, too, that this has just come up for me. So I've been working on this AA map, Alcoholics Anonymous, and looking at the Oxford group and this guy, Buckman. And Buckman was a missionary, too. And one of the people who was running this Episcopal, place in the Flatiron District in New York, like in the teens, Shoemaker, who later became very involved in the Oxford group, they met as missionaries in China. Right. And so the Bircher thing is centered on China. He was evidently, John Birch was a Baptist missionary and who died in China. And in my opinion, it seems like this energy system that we're dealing with may relate to Qi and link into Taoism, the way, to the Tao. And could it go back this far that I've talked about Falun Gong and what's the newspaper that the conservatives all like, Epic Times, and the Falun Gong and their TV stuff. And again, the Falun Gong are supposed to be fighting the Chinese because they're doing the Qigong, but that's manifestation. So what if some of this missionary work, people picked up maybe there's something to this, or and I'm not even saying to me, prayerfulness is also part of that. It's a similar energy. So maybe there's something weird going on.
The same guy was pushing this supposedly the good SEL for the school. So he was also a vendor for a social emotional learning curriculum. I just assumed it was just wanting to tap into resources, get on the government.
I think there's something else going on here, because again, you think of Codex, and you've got the folks, the Wycliffe Bible translators, who are flying into the Amazon to collect languages, and then they've got their International Linguistics Center in Dallas, and now you've got AI parsing all the languages, and is this a codex? And I don't know. But going back to Billy Graham, so he it was a multimedia, he was a TV guy, right? And radio. And Franklin, his son, was with Samaritan's Purse, and he was a protege of this guy, Robert Pierce, Youth for Christ and World Vision, which was very, and I'm not saying I'm pro-communist, but it was framed as an anti-communist thing, which is very much connected to the same Oxford group guy. It had the same vibe. So, this Youth for Christ is backed by Hearst. You've got the World Vision missionary stuff that has UN consultative status. So it's consulting with the UN. And then that's where Franklin is getting his influence. I don't know.
And Franklin ended up being against medical freedom down the road. Oh, Hope Rising is the name of the SEL that Rocky Malloy was pushing. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot for...
It's a lot for one thing. I guess
Yeah,
we can
but-
close it. I mean, but it's like, and again, I'm just like, what is going on? There is complicated
look at
stuff
this.
that I do not
A
know.
self-described former drug smuggling pirate saved by the divine intervention has led a group that promotes chaplain as a tool to proselytize to school children. And he, in the video, I found it's like this movie he made about himself, like he's Errol Flynn, and he just goes in and he's like, well, I was dressed in white, I look like Jesus, I got long hair, and I just act like I told him I was the son of God or something like that. And I mean, he just goes through this whole thing. And I'm like,
wow.
Does he have a Messiah complex?
Wow.
But people eat this stuff up.
Well, they get them brain boxed, and that's where we end up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and you've got Laura Arrillaga and Mark, with Web3. I mean, all of these crypto people are giving him money. Does he not know that it's based in the United States? I mean, and that it's a global, it's a peer-to-peer network. So it's not, you can't do the red, white, and blue version. Oh, and Markel was part of Ridge Lane. So, again, Tom Ridge.
All the way back to your early days.
All the way back to the early days, right? And look at this laurel wreath, the laurel branches, right? And it didn't even occur to me till recently to look, here I am, 2018. Yes, I got my superintendent to admit that he was on Ridge Lane, and then he disappeared, and then he got replaced by Tom Vander Ark. So I don't know if I could count that as a win. But this is early. We've been doing this a while. And so here's the
coming up. What else are we going to uncover here?
I know. Well, fungal.
So you'll include this link to your beautiful maps.
Yeah, people can poke around and look. And you've got Apollo, and then in here where it was saying that it was hallucinogenic. That so the laurel wreaths. It was the Daphne, because he chased Daphne and then she didn't want to be chased, and they turned her into a tree, which is a laurel. And it says, here, let me just read this. Worshippers of the god Apollo held the laurel tree to be sacred as the location of the god's oracle statements. In some traditions, the Pythia, the priestess who pronounced oracles at Delphi, one of the most sacred sites in the early Greek world, would chew laurel leaves, potentially to hallucinogenic effect, before delivering prophecy. So you've got all that, and then look, that's where we have the park, the Pegasus Plaza.
I promise I'll go and visit.
Well, you can wait till I come. Look at this, and then there's the Pegasus, and he's on top of the water that's piped in from blocks away, and all the rocks representing the muses, and the 4,000-pound quartz crystal. Look at this. Tell me, this is not a cult. This isn't a cult. This is a sigil. It says, Cleo, muse of history and the giver of fame, which is in a spiral, and it's a Celtic knot, and then it has hands all over it like that French cave, and then it's got a little We the People, which is the whole push for all the Constitution, and then it has something at the top in Greek that I can't read unless it's the same, and then there's a hieroglyphic circle. Mm-hmm. And then above it at the very top is a circle that includes a semiconductor. That's like a semiconductor.
Semiconductor.
What is that? What is going on in Dallas? Y'all are crazy. Not all of y'all, but it's like,
I concur.
Look at this quartz crystal. That's a big hunk of quartz. It's fascinating.
I don't know.
It's a puzzle. It's such a puzzle.
And the tectonic plates that run through here, I don't know.
And the plates. And they go all the way to Arkansas from that ancient collision. So this is, this is
Gail. I'm going to go find Gail Thomas.
Yeah, we should ask Gail, what were you thinking? Why did you bring
Maybe I'll get
James
this to her.
Oh,
you know what? My friend, I think Susie Bell can tell me how to get to her.
All right. Well, I'm curious. Like, maybe there is some soul healing that's supposed to happen, but it's very curious.
I can find somebody who knows her.
So I think we talked about all the things. Did we talk about most? Is there anything else that
I don't think so.
left out? Oh, you know what? Can I finish the Bobby thing just because it's just gonna make me crazy in case people haven't. Look, so here it is. Blockchain is the future. Look, I've got blue eyes And there's a lot of blue here and Bitcoin and various, like, what is this stuff? I don't know. Yeah. But it's from their campaign website. So it's not like somebody's doctoring this and putting it up there, and it's not his words. This is him.
Trump or President Biden can deal with these new issues, the emerging issues like blockchain and AI. AI and blockchain are new industries. They actually have a tremendous promise to provide us the kind of growth and revenue that can get us out of this deficit crisis. But our solution to AI and blockchain has been to drive them out of the country, to overregulate. We need to regulate them. We need to make sure that AI serves the American public in actually keeping its government honest. We don't want it to become an instrument of government to control and enslave us. Elon Musk famously said that AI is going to steal our jobs and that it's going to kill us. And that very well could be our future. It also could provide tremendous prosperity and tremendous improvements in quality of life for the American people. But we need a president who's thinking about those issues now, who's planning for them, who's not driving blockchain abroad. You know, in the past 2 years, 1,200 new cryptocurrencies have registered in Switzerland. They have a net worth of about $390 billion, collective net worth. Well, they should be starting here.
Well, it's not like Switzerland hasn't always been a place where all the bankers hide all their money.
We drove them to Switzerland. We've driven them to Singapore. We're driving them to China, to the rest of the world, and blockchain is the future.
Blockchain is the future.
We need to keep it here like we kept Silicon Valley here. And I don't think President Trump or President Biden is even thinking about this stuff.
So...
Maybe they're not, but their people are.
Their people are. Well, and the thing is, like, but his people, no. Like, Nicole
Trump's
does
cabinet
know.
in Texas knows. Trump's cabinet, waiting in the wings knows, I'm sure. And, you know, Biden's cabinet, too, they know.
They know. They know what it is. And the thing is, like, you know, I remember way back in the day, again, before, like, when my view was so much smaller, and I said, someday, not too in the distant future, and this was probably like 2016, that the budget, the state is going to say, we don't have money to open the schools in the fall. There'll be some loggerhead, and people will be like, well, what do we do? We have to go to work. And then all the after school time, out of school time, the Boys and Girls Clubs and the YMCAs and the United Way and the churches would just step in, and they were like, well, we'll do it. Because how hard can it be? They're all on devices, and we'll just get some AmeriCorps kids to make sure they don't beat each other up. And I said,
here we are.
And here we are. And they're going to do it.
$28 million deficit in my district that now they're closing 5 schools. I mean, it's here. I can picture the video in my mind that you made.
This is an abbreviated version of a 1-hour talk, Ed Reform 2.0, Personalized Learning in Orwellian Times, that I gave on January 3rd, 2017. It is available for viewing on YouTube. New means of privatizing public education are being put into place nationwide, and most people have no idea. I hope this video gives you a framework for identifying red flags in your own community. Neighborhood schools are not simply bricks and mortar structures. They are community anchors. They hold our memories. They represent the collective experience of generations of students that walk their halls. We grow up in schools. They hold our exhilaration, our fears, our accomplishments, and our failures. Schools shape the people we become in ways great and small. Public schools serve all children, regardless of the challenges they bring with them each day. Teachers and administrators step up to meet their needs in a way that is deeply human, in ways no virtual tutor ever could. Austerity and market-driven policies have resulted in tablets and Chromebooks gradually replacing face-to-face instruction in many schools. Hybrid or blended learning is pitched as high-tech, but in reality it diminishes the time children have to learn in relationship to one another, and the amount of data being collected on children through these devices has grown exponentially. Things most adults grew up having in schools, art, music, libraries, clubs, and tutoring, are now often outsourced to community partners under the guise of out-of-school time learning. Through the adoption of credit flexibility and seat time waiver laws, education is incrementally being detached from physical school buildings. You'll soon be hearing a lot about the importance of any time, any place, any path, any pace learning, and learning ecosystems. Students can hack their education and get credit for many out-of-school time ELOs or extended learning opportunities. Schools and teachers are no longer required. In 1 year, the state budget doesn't get passed, and the community partnerships are in place, and everyone has home broadband access, and the charters have extracted as much value as they could from the system. And on that day, the bricks and mortar schools will be deemed expendable and shuttered. High school students will get a Chromebook and an assigned pathway designer, and the young children will be shuttled over to the Boys and Girls Club chapter or some other nonprofit willing to step up for the kids as long as they can access ESA funds and social impact investments. Of course, once they take the funds, they too will become accountable and required to participate in the data stream, just as the schools were when they were operating. They'll pitch this new version of education as a personalized pathway, but don't be fooled. It's a slog that will force children to navigate a complex, bureaucratic system, gathering skills and competencies for a set career that may not even exist a decade hence. And while they're collecting badges, they'll be monitored in excruciating detail, not only for what they know, but for what kind of people they are. Gritty or not, enthusiastic or not, leadership material or not. Community-based learning and makerspaces may sound cool, but in the end, they are drop-in centers. They don't have the capacity to truly nurture children. Schools nurture children. Pathway designers and data dashboard monitors don't change lives. Teachers do. Coaches do. Principals do. Hold on to that and be prepared to fight for it. Our schools need us. Here are a few things that you can do to help. First, recognize the danger, and then educate yourself and others. Ask questions, lots of them, and ask them publicly. Opt out of data collection. Refuse to collect this data. We all need to organize resistance to automated teaching, virtual schooling, and badging. For more information and links to resources, go to wrenchinthegears.com.
I mean, dang it.
I know.
Right.
And the thing
We don't
is,
wanna be
like when they
right.
break it
We don't
on purpose and the kids are all on the Chromebooks in the church fellowship hall or the basement or whatever, I think, like, imagine, like, think about the whole, that part of the thing with Billy Graham and the missionary and the evangelist. Oh, great. Well, we can use our kids to do our work, right? Oh, we can use them to do the Lord's work. It's work-based learning. Why should they go do that kind of work? They can do our mission work, right? And get badges. And so it's going to be very hard to unpeel them and say, I don't think you want it to be like that.
No.
No. But
on that note, is there any encouragement? Any words of advice?
Well, I think the fact that you guys got skewered on that silly website says a lot. I mean, I'm not laughing because it's fun. It's not fun to have mud thrown on you and stuff, especially when they don't even get the picture right. It's not very professional. But I think the fact that a small group of people with their heart in the right place and their head screwed on right and who are willing to show up and hold them accountable, like, to me, that, like, you're the hope thing. Not that it's all on you, but that's the other piece. I sort of feel like in these complex systems, there's the whole Lorentz, the butterfly effect. Like, where one small thing across time and space can make an outsized change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that the heart, I think stuff does. I think that they know that there's something about the heart and manifestation and the spirit that counts. And they're not operating from that space, I don't think. I don't know that they're necessarily operating from an intentionally evil space. I think they're just opportunistic and not motivated. No.
We'll end on that note.
Yeah, feel better. Thank you for hanging out with me for so long. It was good.
Thank you, Allison, for all the work. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I wish it wasn't like all bubbling up in the way we laid it out, but we'll see.
Me too.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.